Hey, want to take a walk on the wild side and experience the bleeding edge of technology? Then get ready, because it doesn't get much more edgy than this. You're in for a wild... Tired of boring specials about history, science, and technology? Then get on your best headphones, because you might want to lay down for this. A Sovryn Tech special with the world's foremost anarchist technophile, Brian Sovryn. He has a huge, well, you know. And now, here's Brian.
That's right, the Golden Stallion, here for you, the Stefano Demira of Liberty. You bet. Just back from, well, I've been back for a couple days, but back from Toronto and New York City, and I am joined by I was the travel partner for this beautiful, stunning woman.
Thank you, Brian.
The lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy here, of course.
Like sands through the hourglass.
Yeah.
So are the days of our lives.
Yeah, right. That's
well,
pretty good.
You're the one who said you were Stefano Demira, so I had to follow through with that.
Someone had to call it. That's for sure. Maybe not everybody knows who Stefano Demira is, but I'm not going to go into that right now. But what I do want to get into...
He's a villain that's been around for 40 years on a TV show, on a soap opera.
You let it all out.
Well, that's the Cliff's Notes version.
Well, the part
you expect me to keep a secret for you?
The part that you left out is that this guy has died 30, 40 times in the decades that he's been on this show, and he just keeps coming back.
He's like a vampire or something. Yeah,
I tell you, and he's just, it's amazing because he always comes back and he's always cool. And anyway. I don't know. I haven't died a bunch of times.
I was about to ask if you were undead.
No, not undead, but I'm sure there's plenty of people that wouldn't mind if I wasn't walking the earth. So
they're just jealous.
Maybe. Anyway, that may be it. Anyway, so Stephanie, we really had a tour de force of Bitcoin conferences. We had the Inside Bitcoin Conference, all in the stretch of 1 week. We had the Inside Bitcoin Conference, and then right after that, a day later, we went up to Toronto, Canada. What was that, 11th to the 13th? But we were there for longer than that.
Yeah, we stayed a little later.
Yeah, for the Bitcoin Expo. Yeah, exactly.
When I was a little kid, do you remember the Berenstain Bears? Speaking of things from the 80s.
Yes, I do remember the Berenstain Bears.
Okay, so for anyone who is not familiar with them, I think they're actually still around, because I remember seeing, when I was doing pork therapy, I remember seeing people buying Berenstain Bear books through
still the books,
my pork therapy Amazon link. So they're still kicking around.
There's
Talk about
a Sovryn Tech
undead.
Amazon link, by the way. Check it out. Left side, sovryntech.com. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Well... So there used to be, the Berenstain Bears are like this family of bears, and then they, stuff happens to them and they learn little lessons about life and so forth. It's kind of cute. But there was this book in the series of the Berenstain Bears, and it was called The Berenstain Bears and Too Much Birthday. And it was about the little girl bear, and she she had this birthday party, but nothing was going right, and it was just a stressful experience for her. I think that's the plot. It's supposed to be a fun day because it's her birthday.
Right.
But she ends up just getting stressed out because nothing really goes right. And she has to everyone else has a good time except her. And so she's it's too much birthday. That's what I kept thinking about last week it's too much Bitcoin. It's too much conferences. Yeah. Somebody make a children's book about it.
I mean, we've been to quite a few, and of course, after each one, we've done a wrap-up show on Sovryn Tech.
Yeah, we've been pretty consistent about that.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
we went to Vegas. Of course, that episode is notorious. We went to...
Well, funny, because... So, the Vegas episode, which you've probably heard if you listen to the show, it's called Inside Bitcoins Sucked or something like that.
Yeah.
And Inside Bitcoins isn't just an event that happens in Vegas. It's multiple events. They're having one a month in different cities around the world. And It's by this company, Media Bistro. And the reasons we were complaining about it was because it really didn't fit within our libertarian worldview very much. And it was also kind of just like, oh, here's a bunch of people who have something to do with Bitcoin. Let's put them all together. And like, it didn't really have like a unifying theme or anything like that. And, just the choices weren't really that well thought out, I guess. Maybe they were going for a range of different viewpoints. But anyway, it wasn't really our cup of tea. But anyway, so the same people who put on this Vegas event that we bitched about on our podcast put on the New York conference that we just went to last week. And the main guy who runs it, came up to us and said hi to me, and I think he knew who I was because I had spoken a couple times, and he probably listens to Let's Talk Bitcoin. I had spoken at previous conferences, but then he said hi to you, and we were both like talking about it afterwards, and we were like, how does he know who you are? Maybe he heard our show. That would be like the only way he would know who you are.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I mean, when we went to Toronto, and Toronto was great, by the way, but we'll go into more depth with that. But in New York, yeah, like in Toronto, a libertarian crowd, I expect them to know who I am.
Yeah.
Okay. But in a suits and Bitcoin kind of crowd, maybe I'm not so well known. Though a lot of people knew us from our show, Sex and Science Hour, that's on the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. But yeah, for this guy to know my name, and he literally like came out and said, yeah, I know who you are. And I was like, maybe he heard about that show because the show was pretty popular. It got spread around.
Sure, yeah. I mean, and he was very friendly, of course. But
yeah.
But, I mean, okay. I think there's something to be said of when a podcaster complains about your thing, there's no such thing as bad press.
Oh,
it's getting press. We're giving him promotion and any other event that we bitch about that we don't like or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or at least we're talking about it. It's getting out there. And some people are going to hear it and disagree with us and say, well, I would love to go to a Bitcoin conference that's about regulation. And they'll go, so we're doing them a favor, even if we didn't even if it wasn't exactly our favorite, exactly how we would have wanted it,
Yeah. And the Inside Bitcoins conference we went to in New York this year, because we went to the one last year too, but we're talking about 2014 here.
Right.
Really, like MadeSafe was there, and I got to meet face to face David Irvin.
Yeah.
Who we did a special of Sovryn Tech.
Yeah.
A great special that boy, talk about something that's popular and viral. That special really went and it deserved it because MadeSafe is one of the singular most exciting things happening in the world. Not just of technology, but in the world in general today.
Right.
So I got to meet him face to face, which is fantastic. He got a lot of press. I know you did an interview with him for Let's Talk Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But he got a ton of press. Wall Street Journal. He got to give a good talk. The whole business. And I was more than happy for that to be. Like, if there was reason to justify the existence of the Inside Bitcoins conference, that was it singularly. I was very
really
pleased
about that too. And as long as we're talking about things we liked about that conference in New York, they rented out the Javits Convention Center, which, this place is named after some shitty politician who stole a bunch of money from people and was racist. And
he was absolute racist.
Super racist. And he used it to build this convention center at the taxpayers' expense and then erected a big statue of himself, like he's this benevolent guy who did this great thing for the city. So already it's like, oh, okay, well, say what you want about the building, but they have a lot of exposure. They're at a pretty primo location, I think, in Manhattan. Yeah, I mean,
this is the same place where the International Auto Show occurs. This is where New York Comic Con is. I mean, all the big events.
Yeah, it was large. Of course, the Bitcoin convention didn't fill up the whole thing, but it definitely took over kind of a wing of the place.
Sure.
And that was cool. But the thing that I liked most about that was that there was a sign in front of the Javits Center that was like displaying what conferences were going to be there.
Huge LED billboard.
Yeah, and every few minutes it was saying Bitcoin in front of all the traffic that was passing by it.
Yeah, on 11th Ave in Manhattan, I'll take that. Okay.
Yeah, that's great advertising. That's like
I agree.
That's like Roger Ver's billboard about we accept Bitcoins that he's been doing it for years. But but I mean, I was really happy to see Bitcoin kind of getting promoted like that. They had a huge banner in the Javits Center that was like the size of a house, like the front of a house, basically, that said Inside Bitcoins, and so they were really getting Bitcoin out there. There were. I didn't see, maybe I just didn't see them, but I didn't see as many major TV at the conference as I did the last year, actually. Like, I remember in 2013, we went to New York Inside Bitcoins.
CBS was there, right?
Yeah, there was CBS, there was CNN, there was PBS, there was all kinds of major TV outlets interviewing people. I think I actually got interviewed by one of them, CBS, I want to say.
Yeah, CBS.
I don't know if it ever aired, but
PBS was there. There was quite a few last year. I agree.
But I didn't see them this year. I mean, there were definitely journalists there, for sure.
Yeah, lots of journalists.
Yeah, and I mean, it is certainly possible that we just didn't see them, or they were doing interviews elsewhere, or in the press room or whatever. Mm-hmm. I mean, but I saw big name publications, like there was Forbes, there was who else? You were saying
Wall Street Journal was there, TechCrunch. I mean,
and of course, like American banker Mark Hochstein. We love him. I mean,
he's amazing.
He moderated the panel I was on. He's awesome. But anyway, so there were like newspapers there, and there were print periodicals, but I just didn't see as many TV crews.
Yeah, I agree. And
maybe they think people know about Bitcoin already.
Yeah, maybe they think it's semi-passe, or maybe they don't want to put their foot in their mouths anymore because that's been going on for a while. Bitcoin's dead. Oh, wait a minute. How come there's this huge event in the middle of New York where there's tons of VCs, just looking to spend millions of dollars, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it was interesting, though, because I remember at the last year's event, the price was around $130, $35. Mm-hmm. It was like around $100 per Bitcoin at that time, and people were excited about it.
Yeah.
And then later, after that, it went up to $1,000. And then at the time of this recent conference, it was around $450. It was like below $500, not doing too well.
I was kissing below 4 last week.
But that was still more than the previous year. So
sure.
Yeah,
it's not dead. It's just not at what people want it to be,
Right. Well, as an aside, it's really funny because, when Bitcoin went up to like $1,200 back in January or December, whenever it was, mm-hmm. A lot of people were saying, well, it's too expensive now, but I'll buy in when it goes lower. I'm just waiting for the price to come down. Yeah. And now the price comes down and people were like, oh my God, Bitcoin's dead.
Yeah,
you better sell.
Which is it?
Yeah, exactly. Which is it, right? So they're kind of schizophrenic with that.
Yeah, and that gets annoying too because, I'm an ad exec and... Like, I love to deal with Bitcoin companies because I like Bitcoin to get spread. And, of course, with, like, Free Talk Live that I'm an ad exec for,
it's a perfect fit.
Yeah.
They've been talking about Bitcoin forever.
Right, and we have the largest Bitcoin audience in the world. And none of these guys want to, like, hash out, when Bitcoin's low, they don't want to advertise for Bitcoin, when really that's the perfect time to be advertising Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Because it's a time when everybody can, like you said, get into it, or feel like, you can get into it with $1. You don't have to get, you don't have to buy one Bitcoin,
Oh, and tell me you don't have some Bitcoins left. If you listen to Free Talk Live and you're starting a Bitcoin company, tell me you don't have some Bitcoins left over that you paid $5 for, really?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, most people do, I think,
Yeah.
Or at least that you paid less than you're going to get the value from, you know what I mean? At least that you paid less for than when you're spending them.
Sure. Yeah. So anyway, that's a side note.
Right.
But the companies that were there, speaking of companies, the companies that were there, quite a few of them, I thought, like Airbits, I thought was pretty good. They were in Toronto too, but they were in New York City. I thought they had a really unique thing going on where it was very easy of use. It was a wallet with a directory, with a business directory built into it, which I thought was clever. And they claim to be making an Apple wallet, and it's actually done. But how they're going to get that past Apple, I have no idea. Maybe they're going to pull off a trick like Fiva did. Which those guys, boy, I tell you, Fiva wallet.
Oh, they were at both conferences.
They were at both conferences. These guys are like family. Leif and Lamar, I love them.
I was happy to see them.
Yeah.
Like the minute we walked into the Inside Bitcoins Conference at the Javits Center, we walk in and we see them, and like, okay, no, we didn't see them first. Excuse me. We walk in and we see a large group of white gentlemen sitting at coffee tables talking, and we say, oh, we're at the right place.
Yeah. All suits everywhere.
This looks like a Bitcoin conference. Then we see Lamar sitting over there, and he's waving to us, so we go and talk to him, and what did he say? He's like, yeah. I said, yeah, this is probably going to be not as much fun as the Texas conference because that was the last time we saw them.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's kind of stuffy. That's what I call it.
Yeah.
Stuffy.
Well, it was funny because he says just like, or Leif came over and he says, "Oh, phew, normal people," when he saw us standing there. So funny.
Right.
But they were there, which of course, I want them to get as much exposure and attention as they can because I really think their business model's great and their product is very clever and deserves a lot of attention.
Yeah, very innovative. And I mean, from what we heard from them, they are getting a really good response to what they're doing.
Yeah, which is great.
We're getting a lot of signups and people joining just from promoting it at a few Bitcoin conferences.
Right, which is fantastic. So, and there were some other good companies there. Antminer, I thought looked like interesting guys.
You know what? I was, okay, this is a great thing about this New York conference. I was super excited to find out about this one project. And I think actually it was probably like the highlight of the whole conference for me. And it's called Film Annex. And they have this branch called Women's Annex. I don't know if it's definitely like they're affiliated together.
Sure.
But what it is basically like a platform, a blogging platform where people can post videos and write blog posts and then promote them through social media channels. But they actually pay their bloggers. So based on their basically reach and how many hits it gets and how many people read it and so forth, and video views probably, they have some algorithm that calculates it. But based on the reach of the post, the blogger who posted it and promoted it gets paid. And they get paid in Bitcoin. But the unique thing about this is that the Women's Annex project was actually founded by these two women from Afghanistan. And it was Farshta and Roya. And they thought of this idea and they recruited a bunch of women who live in Afghanistan to do blogging for this platform. And then they get paid in Bitcoin. And for a woman who lives in Afghanistan, it's like they were saying you can't really keep your own money. Like if you're a young woman who lives in Afghanistan, your family is going to take it if you have any cash.
Yeah, no, I could totally see Bitcoin being like the only thing you could keep your hands on. Yeah,
I don't doubt that. And then, if you want extra money, you don't have to go pick it up somewhere, like picking up cash at some Western Union transfer station or something like that.
Right.
And actually, like remittances, you can't even really send PayPal to Afghanistan. You can't send PayPal to Afghanistan from the U.S. And Western Union, there's huge fees, and then somebody would have to pick it up, and the cash is just going to get taken anyway. So what's the point? But with Bitcoin, like you said, it's the only thing they could really keep their hands on if they're living with some oppressive family who would take their money if they earned any.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad people like that got some highlight. Like I said, I mean, there were some good booths there, with some good people, no doubt about it.
Yeah, that was the coolest. That was the most exciting project that I found out about for the first time at that conference.
Yeah.
Also, we saw Armory. Armory was there. They debuted their multi-signature function with beta test. It was in beta.
Their wallet can do multi-sig, which for those that don't know, multi-sig is essentially for you to get access to your Bitcoins. You can't just use your wallet. You're going to have to access multiple points of...
it allows you to perform escrow transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain.
Right.
Or it allows you to set parameters in a transaction so that, for instance, a majority of a certain number of people have to sign off on the transaction before it gets sent.
Exactly.
So what that does is opens up the potential for escrow, like we said, and also to prevent against theft, because some people, when most of the time what people are used to is you have your private key, and that's the only thing that's needed to move Bitcoins. And so if somebody gets their hands on your private key, however, through hacking or through malware or through physical control of a device like your phone, if you have it unencrypted or whatever, they can get your Bitcoins, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's irreversible once they're sent. So with multi-signature transactions, that could be a sort of stopgap against theft.
Right.
And that's really exciting because there have been a lot of thefts.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was cool that got announced there. And of course, again, another announcement was MadeSafe saying that they were going to start a lot of their stuff on April 25th, I believe. So that's coming up.
Yeah. Wow, yeah, that's like in a couple days, isn't it?
Yeah, which I didn't know they were working with MasterCoin, which is interesting. And I'm going to be talking to some guys from MasterCoin here pretty soon. Maybe I might even have somebody on the show.
Oh, yeah. So what MadeSafe, what it is, for anybody who's not familiar, you can listen to Brian's interview with David Irvine, but just nicest guy, by the way. I know we said that already, but he's so cool. MadeSafe is basically like decentralizing and encrypting all computing. It's like a platform where you could basically log into any device with a couple of passwords. All your data from like your virtual computer is stored on other people's computers in bits and pieces, and it's encrypted, and it's only accessible by a location that only you know, and that's encoded by your password. So essentially you could access a whole encrypted, decentralized computer with all kinds of apps and programs
cloud
that
storage.
You can run on top of that.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is the cloud storage, this is one of like the key points about MadeSafe, is that the cloud storage itself is literally stored in bits and pieces everywhere. Like if someone takes your computer, they don't have access to the complete amount of data that you put into MadeSafe's network.
Exactly.
And that's really key, is that it's only bits and pieces. So this is true decentralization, probably for the very first time.
Yeah, I think it is, absolutely. And so to incentivize people to participate and to store bits and pieces of other people's encrypted virtual computers, they have a coin built into MasterCoin. There's
called SafeCoin.
It's called SafeCoin, yeah, and that is through MasterCoin, right?
Right. MasterCoin is essentially helping them, get that out there.
Right.
So, that was great. And so it's kind of a mixed bag, because the problem was, though, is that in the hallways and for most of the talks, and you were on a panel there too, it was just,
to that, yeah.
it was just more of the regulation. And the worst part about it for me,
I didn't really talk to those people, but yeah, it kind of like ostracized me from half of the conference.
Oh yeah, no, but I mean, you could just like stand there and just listen, and you could really hear it, and it was the kind of the key phrase coming out of it, and a lot of people were tweeting this. Was that, look, regulation's coming, regulation's inevitable, and all this stuff. And boy, did that get frustrating to me. Now, I mean, we've complained about this a lot of time. Maybe, maybe I'm beating a dead horse here or whatever, but I
don't really agree with that statement.
Well,
like it's inevitable if you make it that way. Like people give government so much power in their minds.
Yeah.
And that's the real thing. Like, if you believe that regulation is inevitable, yeah, it will be.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'll say this, I think that may be an accurate statement. That doesn't mean people are going to pay attention to it. Okay?
Well, yeah, it's just like every other industry that's regulated. There are some rules that everybody is supposed to follow, and the people who are important don't follow those rules, right?
Right, and so, my response to everybody at that conference was the same, and I tweeted it too, for whatever good that does. It was just that, okay, fine, regulation's inevitable. Well, guess what? The fall of the U.S. government's inevitable too. Like, literally inevitable. It's going to happen.
What will they do then? They'll probably feel so uncomfortable, like, oh my God, our regulations are gone. It's anarchy. It's the Wild West.
Yeah.
Children.
Yeah, there it is. The cry for the children.
Yes. Won't somebody please think of the children?
Yeah.
And think of the bankers who are going to profit off of all these regulations.
Exactly.
Because they keep out their competition and they ensure that only the biggest boys on the block can actually comply with them.
Right. So the overall attitude there, despite any good things, and we've talked about quite a few good things that were there, certainly more than what was at New York last year, or in Vegas for that matter. The overall attitude just sucked. I mean, you could really feel that it just, I almost hate using this word anymore, but it was also statist, it really was.
Yeah, statist is an appropriate word.
Yeah, even though there was a shocking amount of Liberty people showing up. I mean, Ernie Hancock was there. He's always a good time.
That's what I was about to say. It felt like there were two different conferences going on. It felt very divided. Like, there was definitely, like, you had the keynote speech that opened up the whole conference, which we didn't see because we got in at 2 a.m. the night before, and I just couldn't wake up at 8. I had to, sleep for another hour, so I missed this one talk. But it was reported on the next day, and apparently this guy Jeremy Allaire from Circle, who's, they claim they're going to be this big mainstream Bitcoin company that makes it integrates it with the bankings. He was saying Bitcoin is going to be part of the global banking order, and he said some really weird stuff like that.
Yeah, he said it should be.
Now,
Circle's a competitor to Coinbase. There's someone I wanted to talk to, but now, frankly, I'm glad I never did, till after this, because I don't want anything to do with them.
Yeah, I don't think I can really in good conscience support that.
No, if you want to be working with the world bankers, or saying that, hey, this is how it has to be. It's one thing if someone gets in touch with you from, whoever, Goldman Sachs or you name it, and says, hey, we're interested in working with you. It's another thing when you are perfectly desirous of wanting, to deal with Jesus. And I don't want to say the devil, because the devil's a good guy, right? But anyway, it's a problem. And
well, even Coinbase, okay, they comply with all these regulations, right? They follow all the banking regulations, and they're a totally compliant company. They do KYC and AML and all that shit.
Yeah.
Well, they don't come out. Okay, they do comply with all these regulations, but they don't come out and say, this is great.
Right.
We should, let's bring Bitcoin into the global banking order and all this. What else did he say? There were some just scary comments that I think I've kind of blocked out now, but he, and then he also basically said in another place, the libertarians kind of serve their purpose. We don't need them anymore. Move aside, step aside. We're done with you. Go away.
Yeah, a lot of people are really starting to make those kind of comments. I heard at Coin Summit, which we didn't go to, and boy, thank whoever that we didn't. But
I wasn't allowed to go to that.
Oh, I applied
you're
a woman.
Yeah, I applied. I don't think it's because I'm a woman, because there were other women there, but for whatever reason, I think there were a few female speakers, but probably the vast minority, I would guess, were female. But I'm not going to say it's because of sexism. I think it's because I was discriminated against because I'm too libertarian, or I don't have. Perhaps it's because I don't have a Bitcoin project that's raising a bunch of venture capital, or is very interesting to people who are doing shopping and all that kind of stuff. I just don't. And maybe that's why I wasn't allowed to go.
Well, I mean, apparently at Coin Summit, you
had to apply to get in.
Yeah, but people came out and said that, libertarians are done. Big money's here. Too bad. Move along. It's ours now. So, and I have some theories on why a lot of these guys are making these comments. And actually, this episode will be released before the actual, regular episode of Sovereign Tech this weekend, episode 70, and I'm going to be talking about why I think that is in that. So I'm not going to go into that right now. But speaking of, like projects, Bitcoin projects, I'm a little concerned about one, and I'm going to be, they're sometimes, in the tech world, okay, there's times where I hear things, same with you, Stephanie, you probably have a bigger inside track than I do on a lot of things. There's some things that I hear on an inside track that, no, I'm not going to announce until the time, that there's a time for it to happen. Okay. And one thing, though, that I don't feel any reason to not talk about, and that I feel like I have somewhat of an inside track on, is I am very concerned. And I did a special about this, and the special was great, and the technology is sound, but the organization may not be. And this is BitShares. I'm very, very concerned over, I don't know, this... there was a conversation had where they were talking about how, okay, they came out with this great new website explaining what BitShares is. I think it's fantastic. BitShares.org, go check it out. It's really exciting to look at. But then they started talking about, people at BitShares started saying essentially that, they're changing the focus of BitShares, where they want it to be an educational site for all these Bitcoin 2.0 technologies and all these crypto platforms. And I get it, but to me, that sounds very much like, okay, and please, I love the idea of BitShares. In fact, Dan Larimer, the head of BitShares, has come right out and said, I want to end governments. I am so supportive of that. Okay. But I did not get a good feeling about the future of BitShares at Inside Bitcoins. I felt I was hearing something that was a product that was shifting, that was on shifting sands.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very concerned about that. So I'm just being totally open with my listeners. This could turn around and I could be dead wrong. But I often find I'm not wrong when it comes to trends. I often find I'm actually really ahead of the game. I'm not boasting. I'm not patting myself in the back. I'm just saying, okay. And I'm very, very concerned about BitShares. And so I want to get that out there. That I don't know if I'm not necessarily saying to get your money out of it. I'm just saying to keep your eyes open. Yeah, because it is such an exciting,
a friendly type of concern.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Like that was something I know you were really excited about, but to hear the focus changing so much is a little bit troublesome sometimes.
Yeah,
right?
to hear really a lack of focus, and that's what I'm hearing. I mean, admittedly, in my opinion, when you want to start highlighting your competitors on your site, and that's what essentially what was being said is that, well, we're going to have, we're going to talk about BitShares, we're going to talk about Ethereum, we're going to talk about Mastercoin, we're going to talk about all these. When you want to highlight your competitors, which they are, okay, whether or not you can all fit in the same space or not is regardless. When you want to highlight your competitors, that's not how you do business. Okay. Like, I mean, and I don't care how far ahead you're thinking of as far as like, okay, no, we're going to do things differently now. This is not the way to do it. Okay. If you, especially in the tech world, if you've got a product that's this good, and it is that good, you play the Nintendo card where you pretend Sony and Microsoft don't exist. And you just do whatever the hell you're doing and you keep going and you go full steam and you don't listen to anybody. But that's not what I'm getting. I'm getting the exact opposite business model, and I think it's a bad business model. Okay.
Do you think that, just play devil's advocate here,
please?
I think it's probably so mind-bogglingly hard to run a company like that, or
Sure.
to do something like that, because what these things are organizations that eventually have the goal of being self-managing,
Sure.
so that the people don't even have to be there. They're just decentralized autonomous organizations. They run themselves and they're decentralized, but they're not there yet. We're in this weird like in-between phase where they're trying to get to that point, but they're not, and they have to be developed and they have to sort of come out and they need a little bit of like shepherding to get to that point. But like, how do you even do that? It's so confusing, and there's so many like, I would be really worried that there would be a lot of people who would feel that this is going to be a really disruptive technology. They're going to try to stop them. They're going to try to bring legal pressure upon them of all different kinds. Like, get out of the country before you start saying shares.
Oh, yeah, and they had planned on that, on leaving the country, moving the business away. That's
Right.
not hidden knowledge.
But that's got to be scary. I mean, yeah, Brian Page said that when we talked to him before, but that's got to be really scary to like be in an organization like that.
Sure, absolutely, it's scary, and I get that,
and hard to do. Right?
I get that, but I really feel like they're trying to, because Ethereum's getting a lot of press. Mastercoin, is doing pretty well for itself in a lot of ways. And I feel like BitShares, something's going on in that organization to where they're trying to ride the coattails of the excitement around Ethereum and Mastercoin and whoever else. And I worry about that, because when I know it's hard. I think that's a great point for you to bring up. But it's something about it doesn't feel right at all. And my other concern is this, and I think you raise a valid point, is that BitShares may be getting the hardest time from VCs and whoever else, because Dan Larimer is the only guy that has the guts to say, no, I am going to end governments. I'm going to free this economy. Yeah. He really is.
He's calling it what it is, which is shares. I mean, like, it's funny how people are so like every other company really shies away from that word.
Yeah, no,
and they all have slightly different branding, and they actually do something that's pretty significantly different.
They're unique, sure, from each other.
Yeah, although they are sort of like the same
platform technology.
Yeah, platform technologies, right? Like if this were biology, we'd say maybe they're in the same like order or something, or the same phylum or something, but they're not like the same species.
Different genus.
Yeah, right. Like they're all cats, just one is a leopard and one is a...
Sure.
Okay, never mind. No more of that. But
anyway.
Yeah, they do stuff that's different, but... Yeah, I mean, like so many people are coming out with these technology, like, there's a lot of talk now about about user-created assets. Like Adam B. Levine, my co-host on Let's Talk Bitcoin, is kind of obsessed with these right now, which is basically the idea that companies are going to have IPO coins. And so like instead of issuing stock, they're issuing coins that represent some ownership in the company,
right.
or tokens that represent ownership in the company, or tokens that represent debt, like
right.
a bond thing, or
which BitShares could do.
Yeah, or tokens that represent like a claim on future rewards, like a Kickstarter thing, some kind of like perks, or, all these different, everybody could have their own coin, and each coin could just be tokens that do something different. Where was I going with that? But oh yeah. So a lot of them are very much like they are shares. It's an IPO. It's a stock. Like we don't really have other vocabulary to describe that.
Right.
But they can't use the vocabulary of stocks because...
Well, then the SEC goes after it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's amazing the thought crime that this creates.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, well, oh, no, you can't think of that as what it is,
right.
which is a stock. You can't think of it like that. You have to think of it in some different way. Like it's really this mental form of censorship. It's very weird. Yeah,
absolutely. So, I'm just putting that out there. Look, Dan Larimer is a genius guy. He's got the right attitude. I love him. Brian Page, great marketer. That whole team there is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Okay. But I'm just worried something's not exactly right. In fact, we announced on Sovereign Tech, on the special, that there'd be an event at the end of July called Beyond Bitcoin. That's been postponed pretty much indefinitely, it almost sounds like now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm just putting out fair warning there. That's all I'm doing.
Right.
And before I want to hear a little bit I want to hear about your panel that you did at Inside Bitcoins, then we can start talking about Toronto. But before I do that, while we're talking about blockchain technologies and platform technologies, crypto platform technologies out there, I was very disappointed that Next was not represented at all.
I didn't really see anyone at either of those conferences. Yeah,
the only people. And I didn't get the chance because I wasn't speaking in New York. The only people that talked about Next was, I heard Adam B. Levine mention it during his fireside chat.
Yep.
And I talked about it every chance I could in Toronto. Mm-hmm. To anybody that would listen, I talked about Next. I was very, very disappointed. These were too high profile to be in New York City.
Yeah.
And then Toronto to have, this huge, the stuff that the community in Canada is doing is absolutely amazing. The Bitcoin community, the cryptocurrency community, to not be there. Ooh, I thought that was, I felt bad, that they weren't. And maybe they had other things to do. The Next community isn't stopping. They keep coming out with their great 1-minute podcasts that I love.
Right.
They do hangouts where Tizen and whoever else talks about stuff. It's not like they're not out there, but they should have been getting represented at these things, and they should have been trying to create some degree of buzz. They were in Texas.
Yeah, they definitely were in Texas. I just wonder, maybe it's like a decentralized marketing thing where it's like, oh, well, just nobody picked up that ball and ran with it.
Yeah, somebody should have, though. But I did my best.
Yeah.
I did my best. And a lot of people, when I mentioned Next, they got excited. They're like, what do you mean that this can already do everything that all these, other Bitcoin 2.0 technologies can do?
They don't tout that enough.
They don't.
I think like people say, oh, well, the functions in Next are kind of minimal. Well, so what? They're going to be minimal in Ethereum too. They're going to be at first, they're going to be minimal in everything else.
People got to use it.
At least they have a product with Next.
Yeah, exactly.
At least they have a working thing that you can actually use now.
Yeah, it's ready to go. This thing's tailor made, and you can donate Next to the show. That's how much, and it goes right onto my Android phone.
Yeah,
that's how
cool.
ahead of the game they are.
So we should say for the listeners who aren't aware of this, BC Next, the creator of Next, recently came out and said that he or she was going to walk away from Next or something like that they were done associating with it, and their next project would be under their real name.
Yeah,
or
and it would
public.
be something bigger and pretty much BC Next,
left it to the community.
Yeah, next is up to the community.
Yeah.
So what happens next is up to the next community. And I mean, I heard they're going to be. I keep an eye on Next because I'm very, very interested in it. It's one of the cryptocurrencies. I'll use that for lack of a better phrase. That excites me. There's very few that do, but this is one of them that does. And I guess they're going to be at a Star Trek convention. They've got like a booth that's going to be there, which I mean that makes sense because
that's cool.
Yeah, I think nothing wrong with that, but I really think they missed out on a real golden opportunity with a couple of these.
Yeah. Well, oh God, there are so many goddamn Bitcoin conferences now.
That's true.
So you and I, or just me, have been going to like at least one a month for the last year, I would say.
Yeah.
Or conferences that are very similar to Bitcoin conferences.
Yeah, I mean, Liberty Forum might as well be a Bitcoin conference. It used to be the biggest one.
Yeah, or like the Passport to Freedom thing that I went to, and
right.
I spoke about Bitcoin even though it was about like getting out of the U.S.
Yeah.
And getting your assets offshore. But anyway, so we've been going to like at least one a month for the past year, and it's just getting hard to keep up with them. I think like, we'll talk about Toronto in a minute, but I think like with the Toronto conference, Anthony, who organized it and sponsored it, was like, geez, I didn't know that there were going to be a million other Bitcoin conferences leading up to this when I started planning for it. And it kind of stole my thunder a little bit, because there were just so many that people start to only go to like maybe the ones that are geographically close to them or the ones that are, that align with their specific interests, right?
Yeah, I mean, Anthony DiOrio, a guy that I absolutely love. I mean, I just love the guy. Just hardest working guy in Bitcoin. He's been a guest on Sovryn Tech in the past, very graciously, because he is a busy, busy man. And I mean, and another person, Jason King, that we got to talk with in Toronto anyway, he said the same thing. He's like, because he has a Bitcoin conference that we will be going to.
Bitcoin in the Beltway.
Yeah, Bitcoin in the Beltway. This is in Washington, D.C. Very exciting.
Right before Pork Fest.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But he said the same thing. He's like, when I set up for Bitcoin in the Beltway, there was only going to be two other events, Bitcoin conferences that he knew of.
Yeah.
He set this up months ago. And then suddenly, I mean, and I think everybody thought the same thing. Hey, there's only a couple Bitcoin conferences. We need to do one because there's only two. We've got a whole year we got to cover.
Exactly.
And then everybody thought the same thing. And now there's like 30, of these things. It's crazy. It wears people down. And when we were in Toronto, we weren't the only ones saying it. And it's not that Toronto was a bad conference. It was probably, in my opinion, maybe the best of the year.
Yeah.
Okay. Hands down. And I don't think anything else is really going to match it because there aren't many other community-based, conferences coming up. All the rest of them are all this media bistro suits bullshit. Okay.
Yeah. Well, Bitcoin in the Beltway will be more
Bitcoin
community.
in the Beltway is going to be great. And
no of course, Pork Fest, but that's not a Bitcoin conference.
Not directly. So, I think everybody had the same feeling that, wow, we are conferenced out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we were feeling, but everybody was feeling that. Even VCs, you name it, they're all saying these conferences are just getting too much.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And again,
I was like reevaluating my whole life after we got.
Yeah, seriously, like you literally were.
I was. It was like because they just take so much time, and I'm not complaining. Like it's fun to go to these conferences and stuff, and it's really fun to meet people. I love that aspect of it, and it's fun to like know about what's going on in Bitcoin and see all these different projects and people taking shape. That I'm not complaining about at all, but just like it's stressful to go to a place that's not your home. Like I'm kind of a homebody. I like to just relax and be at home and have like a predictable source of like food that I know is going to be good for me, and like try not to spend that much money. Like I think I probably gained like 5 pounds and spent thousands of dollars extra than I wanted to spend on these trips just in the past month. So I wasn't really pleased about that because it's taking a physical toll, and like the sleep is another thing. You're sleeping in these like hotel rooms, especially in New York. It's just, you feel like you're in a sardine can.
Oh yeah. I actually got kind of sick in Toronto because I literally just wasn't
I don't know
sleeping.
how I haven't gotten sick because
Yeah.
I felt really stressed and I wasn't getting enough sleep. And they start these conferences at 8 a.m. It doesn't make any sense.
No, that's the other weird thing too. Is that
it feels like school. It's like weird.
That's a weird thing too. Is like I get this goes for Liberty conferences are the same way.
Yeah,
frankly, but so many of them, like. In fact, even science fiction conventions, which I used to frequent constantly, all of them, they all start at like 9 a.m. And I'm thinking, like, wait a minute, what the hell?
This must be a conspiracy.
Nobody I know in the tech world, in the Liberty world, maybe in the Liberty world, there's some stuffies that that get up at like 6 a.m. or something.
It's a breed, though. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like
a lot of people are self-employed. They don't have to get up at 8. Yeah,
I mean, nobody writes good code at 7 a.m. unless they've been up since noon the day before.
Exactly.
Nobody does that. And I'm thinking, who the hell are these people? Like, they're not even real if they can get up at this time.
Yeah, I know. I got asked to give New User Bitcoin talks. At the Texas conference, they had me at like 10 a.m., which wasn't too bad. But at the Toronto conference, they had me at like 9 o'clock, 9:30. And it was like on a weekend, and it was kind of hard to find. Like, you had to kind of wander through the bowels of the Toronto Convention Center to find this room.
Beautiful venue, huge, but you had to really find your way.
Yeah, where they had this free session that was supposed to be for new users. And man, I think the time may have deterred some people from wanting to show up.
Sure. Yeah, certainly. I mean, and like in New York, I'm not blaming anybody. I know this is how things, presently kind of work. But like in New York, yeah, I get it. There's a lot of VCs there. And believe me, I understand, the need to be up to deal with international markets, that you get up at 4 a.m. in the morning and you attach yourself to a phone, or in this case, the internet now these days. I totally understand that world as well as anybody can. But like, isn't that the problem? Is that like, that's one of the, this is part of freedom, is that we got to stop being slaves to these fucking clocks.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's so bad. And to, have people get up, I think it's antithetical, and.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes I feel like the mornings, not in Toronto, but like sometimes I feel like the mornings are sort of a PC diplomatic way for conference organizers to give speakers a chance to speak who they don't consider that important.
Yeah, that's a possibility. That's a possibility.
Like, if it's not that important, they'll put you in the morning slot because nobody wakes up on time for it. Like, so in New York, they put the panel that I was on, which was called Bitcoin Remittances in the Developing World. Very interesting panel to me, but they put it at like 9:30 a.m., like right after the first session. It wasn't the first session, but it was like the second session, maybe.
It was a packed room, though.
It was, and I was surprised that many people came because, like, I thought the subject was interesting, but like 9:30, that's almost like giving someone a nosebleed seat. Like, like it's not a time when it's probably going to be the best attended. You know what I mean? So,
but it was very well attended, and you got. How many people were on this panel with you? Mark Hochstein was
he
emceeing
moderated it, and he did a fantastic job. And then there were like 4 other people on the panel with me.
You were the only one that got, as soon as they announced you, not at the end of the panel, at the beginning of the panel.
Yeah,
people just started clapping. For nobody else.
I introduced myself. I said I'm on Let's Talk Bitcoin podcast, and people started to clap.
Oh yeah,
that was so cool.
Yeah,
I
room
really
was on
felt
fire.
great about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was surprised by it, but I was really happy to see that people liked Let's Talk Bitcoin and listened to it.
They liked you. Make no mistake.
I did have a couple people after that panel say that they wished I had been able to speak more, and that I had, like I was the only one who was actually speaking with the interests of like the people who might be on the receiving end of remittances.
Sure.
Had in mind, because like, okay, so the panel was called Bitcoin Remittances and the Developing World. And there were, just some people on the panel who like were really focused on making institutions that might send money from a place like the U.S. to a place like anywhere in the developing world,
right?
Anywhere in the rest of the world, basically. They were just really focused on making these institutions like KYC compliant and like issues like that. And I was the only one who spoke up. Even Pelle Brandgaard was on the panel. He founded Capochi, and which got actually shut down by M-Pesa because there was like some misinformation about it in the media and they were scared of Bitcoin or something. But anyway, I was the only one on this panel who said, look, there's nothing to prevent people from sending money to their family members in a different country in Bitcoin directly, even if that person only has a feature phone or whatever. There's 37 coins. There's BTC to SMS. There's Coinapult. There's all these different ways that you can use Bitcoins with a feature phone. Yeah. So if somebody has that, then they're all set.
37 coins. There's a few different ones.
Yeah, I just mentioned that.
Oh, sorry. I didn't hear
That's
that part.
fine.
I do that all the time. Go ahead.
It's cool, Brian. I know you know what I mean. But
yeah.
There's all these ways for just individuals to do remittances in a direct, like peer-to-peer kind of manner. Like they don't necessarily need these institutions that have to deal with KYC and stuff to be able to send money to their families. People have been doing that for a while. So I was like the only one to say that. Everybody else was talking about doing it like really institutionalized. And I didn't really agree with that. And
they were even trying to I thought they were downing Bitcoin. Look, Bitcoin isn't going to do this, and it's not going to do it the best.
They said okay, so the argument was most of the cost of remittances and sending money abroad is in complying with the regulations. It's not in actually sending the money. So therefore, Bitcoin doesn't solve that problem. And I was like, wait a minute. Yes, it does. It does solve that problem. Wait, you're missing the point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and they missed the point that, because they talked about this one company that will do it for 0%. And it's like, well, that's nice.
Oh, that was a company in India, right?
Yeah. But I was like, well, that's
Zoom.
Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay. But
they will send money to different places for 0%. Sorry.
Right. But the problem is that that's nice that it can do that. But guess what? Bitcoin can do it anywhere. Zoom will not.
Yep. That's
okay.
True.
I mean, that's a fact of how that is. I mean, I think, and you got some.
And Bitcoin does it instantaneously, whereas Zoom, if you want to pay a 0% fee, you're going to wait 5 days.
Yeah.
Because they try to upsell you to do it faster.
Yeah.
That's how they make their money.
Yeah. So I thought the other panelists were nice enough, but misinformed, or at least maybe agenda based. I don't know. But
they were just coming from a perspective of really inside the system kind of thinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I did think that Pelle had some good things to say about when people say the developing world, there's this tendency to kind of lump it all together, and it's just, oh yeah, anywhere outside the U.S., people are living in mud huts and they have AIDS and malaria, and it's a wonder they don't have any food and let alone internet. But that's obviously not true. It's a giant planet out there, and there's all different kinds of countries, and conditions are different in different places around the globe, and it's going to be a very individualized situation if you're trying to send money to someone who's in a different place on the planet.
Yeah.
And so that was an important perspective to keep. And there was also an interesting bit that I wasn't really too familiar with about the Hawala system. Have you heard of that? In Somalia, I guess there's this trust-based lending system, which we always say Bitcoin is trustless, but this might be the kind of the good kind of trust, I guess, where it's reputation. It's not really trust, just trust us. It's reputation. Yeah. And so people get loans based on basically the what I think Pelle was saying was the oldest form of KYC, which is I know you, I know your father, I know how many camels he has, and I'm going to give you this loan based on that. That's your credit worthiness.
Well, I mean, Somalia. Or wait.
That's what people in the U.S. associate with anarchy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's warlords,
it's
anarchy.
And so what happens when you have anarchy? Oh, boy, suddenly everything's based upon, actual, reputation.
Yeah.
How about that?
Well, actually, there was a lady on the panel from an organization called DCIQ, which is basically exists to help international remittances organizations comply with all the laws. And so Mark Hochstein said, well, Hawala, that must be a dirty word in the circles that you run in, Mary. She was the rep from this company. And she really kind of danced around that question. Like she didn't really answer it.
Yeah. But just to be clear, Somalia is not actually an anarchist country, and it's very annoying when people, state-loving types love to level that against anarchists, saying, well, why don't you move to Somalia? There is only one anarchist country on the planet right now, and that is Zomia. So,
but an anarchist country, isn't that kind of an oxymoron?
Yeah, but it is an oxymoron because it's not a country. It's actually just a landmass.
Yeah, right.
So they don't call it a country, but it is called Zomia, and
it's a region. Yeah,
it's a region, and China hates it. So does India. So do all these countries around there because they can't tax the damn people living in it. So anyway, I love to throw that out there because when people say, it's like, why don't you move to Somalia if you're an anarchist? I say, well, I'll move to Zomia, where it is actual anarchy. And then they instantly go, ooh, where's Zomia? It's like, yeah, exactly. You lost your catchphrase.
Is that where the island of stone bitcoins is?
Maybe. No,
I think it is.
I don't know.
It's so the island of stone bitcoins is like an article that's written by George Edinger, but it's an idea. So there's this island in Micronesia called the Island of Yap or the Isle of Yap or something. And in that island, somebody at one point decided there are these like giant spherical rocks, like as big as two people. You can't really move them. And somebody at one point decided that those rocks are money. But since you can't obviously you can't put it in your back pocket, how are you going to keep track of what the money's doing and who has the money, basically, who owns it and who can spend it? Well, they did that via a ledger, a public ledger that everybody knew, that was available to all the villagers, and that could be basically audited by the fact that everybody had a copy. It's just like the blockchain, except it exists in the physical world. Yeah. So people use that analogy to explain the Bitcoin blockchain as a distributed public ledger that is represents who sort of has a claim on what pieces of money or what units.
Right. Now, this is interesting, and I want to shift gears, if it's okay with you. I want to shift gears towards Toronto, towards the Bitcoin Expo now.
Sure.
If you're all set talking about if there's more comments you had about your talk.
There's just one thought I wanted to finish that we brought this up a lot earlier. I said at one point that I felt like there were two conferences going on because we did actually see a lot of libertarians at that conference, at the New York conference. Like Mark Edge showed up. Just random. We didn't know he was going to be there, but he just came for the day. Ernie Hancock was there. I had no idea he was going to be there. Of course, David Irvine with Made Safe. Yeah. And then there were, Dan Larimer, of course, that we talked about, and Trace Mayer was there, and we talked to Sneak, and there were all these people there that were definitely libertarian. Oh yeah, and Xavier Hawke. I don't think he's really a libertarian. He's in the permaculture movement. He's big into
permaculture, which they cross current.
I think, he definitely strikes me as an outside the box thinker.
Sure,
definitely not in the system. He showed up with a friend who had face tattoos, so it's pretty much negates
pretty unique
working on Wall Street.
Yeah,
but they were cool, and so there were a lot of cool people there that were not establishment types, what I mean, who were saying let's regulate Bitcoin. But then there were also a lot of the regulatory types.
Yeah.
At the same time. And so I kind of felt like I stayed in one side of the conference, and I was only really talking to and interviewing certain people. I didn't try to get any interviews with government officials or VCs or anybody who was in the Wall Street kind of financial sector type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, overall feeling of the New York City of Inside Bitcoins,
Oh, one more story from that?
Please.
Sorry, I just thought of this randomly. Remember when Barry Silbert said that there was going to be a price bubble? And then somebody tweeted that.
That was the big news.
Yeah, we got to tell that story. So right before my panel about remittances, there was this other panel. I don't know what it was about. It was something... I don't even know the title of it, but it was some kind of, pretty Bitcoin as an investment or something like that. And Barry Silbert is from Second Market, I believe, who's starting a Bitcoin exchange, and he's a pretty in the system kind of person.
Yeah.
But he said what did he say? He made an offhand joke basically at the end of the panel, saying something like, people say there's going to be a bubble in Bitcoin price. I'll make a prediction. I guarantee there's going to be another price bubble.
Yeah.
And some media outlet like tweeted that and like reported it as that was like the big news
that
of
was
the
the
day.
big news, and there was so much else said.
And it was just
that.
like an offhand comment. I just like, he just said it as a joke, basically, because it's kind of a funny and obvious statement, but they were reporting that as though this was like the big, serious news.
Ridiculous. So the overarching attitude of the Inside Bitcoins Conference in New York, I thought, sucked, but I mean, there were certainly...
But there were glimmers of hope within it, definitely, and there were some cool things about it, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So, but overall, it felt very much like, I mean, better than Vegas, but not as good as Austin.
Okay, I was just thinking about the atmosphere in Vegas, like that I was not very comfortable in, with all the like, glitzy, like, things and like big giant buildings that you had to walk. It was like the antithesis of Vegas in that way, because like in Vegas we were saying how it took 30 minutes to walk from one side of the hotel to the other.
Yeah.
Well, in New York it felt like everything was just in a tiny sardine can. It was, I said that before, but it just felt like you're being squished and smushed and like squeezed into these tiny spaces.
Oh, in New York itself?
Yeah, we tried to go out to dinner with a group of 9 people, and that was like a big problem because there wasn't enough room in restaurants for a group of 9.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like there's no space. It feels like everything is being rationed. I said this on Sex and Science Hour, so I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it bears repeating because it just feels like you're in this kind of like survival scenario, where like everything is scarce and you're kind of fighting with people and there's a lot of conflict about resources because there are just not enough of things.
Yeah, I mean, New York City, of course, I grew up there for quite a few years. And I mean, if you're not... My problem with it is... I don't like having to rely on taxis, the bus, or subways or whatever. I want autonomy. I want to either be able to really walk there or I want to drive my own car. Yeah. And neither of those are really viable options, especially if you're at the Javits Center, to get somewhere in to get something to eat even in New York.
That was a problem. It felt like there were all these new problems created. How do you get food? Well, you got to you got to walk somewhere, and then you have to know where you're going, and you have to make sure it's right and has food you can eat and it has a reasonable price. And how are you going to get there in the rain? You didn't have an umbrella. And it's just like there are all these different problems that are created that are non-issues in New Hampshire that we're kind of adapted to.
Yeah, or in pretty much anywhere outside of like a large city, you know? And so, I'm not a fan of the whole large city things. Of course, large cities out west, like Las Vegas, I mean, everything's spread out because they're in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, then
so
it's like a sprawling thing.
Right, same with Austin. Everything's like really spread out. That was kind of the same deal. So, but you can go to both extremes, and New York was the other extreme.
Yeah.
As to where, I thought Toronto was kind of the somewhat of the
happy medium.
Yeah, and it was, the city itself was a lot nicer. Very, very, boy, talk about needing something to eat. You could have something to eat in no time. Very fast. And we were in the heart of the city. We're right by where the Blue Jays play. So, it wasn't like we were, in some nice suburb or something. No, we were in dead center Toronto. Toronto itself, the city was very nice.
Very attractive women.
Sure.
I noticed that. That was one thing I really liked about Toronto. But, people generally pretty nice, and I thought it was better than those two extremes like you described. I enjoyed the sort of middle ground. There were some like weird customs though. Like we stayed in a hotel and they not only like pre-charged my credit card for the entire amount of the stay, which was like a 5-day stay, and didn't tell me. So it was like, there's this $1,000 charge on my credit card. Where did that come from?
Right.
And so I prepaid for it, and all right, well, okay, I guess this is how they do it in Canada. In the U.S., they don't bill until you check out usually. Yeah. And then like once we got there, we got the Rockstar charge, Brian.
Well, that was the $1,000 charge.
No, that was a separate one. So the $1,000 charge was to pay for the actual stay.
Yeah. When we arrived, they charged a bunch more.
Yeah, when we arrived.
I thought that's what you were originally talking about.
Yeah, well, when we arrived, they put another like $650 hold on my credit card.
Yeah, this
for
is
incidentals.
Exactly. This is, I mean, some hotels will do this like on a regular basis, but it won't be anywhere near like the extra almost $1,000 you had to hash out.
Oh yeah,
for it. But this is what they call a rock.
We got it back because obviously we didn't trash the hotel room.
No,
but
right.
Felt like Axl Rose.
Well, that's just it. This is what they call a rock star charge.
Yeah.
It's very, very common in all over the U.S. anyway, and Europe, I imagine, is pretty common too. But I can speak personally for the U.S. one, where if, they look at you, the workers at the hotel, they look at you and they think, oh man, this could get nuts or something like that. They hike up this crazy charge on you. Okay, because they're
we
expecting.
Should take that as a compliment,
Yeah,
but
maybe,
still,
yeah.
I didn't feel very complimented.
No. I mean, but then, they're expecting Vince Neil from Motley Crue to be tossing chairs out of the window.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's now, I don't know how we look like that. Maybe it's because they had a hat on that was backwards. I can't believe that
We
was
were
the
like
reason.
a little disheveled from traveling, but God, I mean,
Yeah,
it wasn't that bad.
No, right. It's crazy. So, but I mean, the hotel itself wasn't bad.
Well,
Though the spa and the pool was closed.
it felt
which
a little
sucked.
nickel and dimey, I have to say. It was almost like
sure.
Vegas. Like,
Yeah,
they
sure.
had cashews and sodas in the room, but they were $5. They were $11 for the cashews and $5 for the soda.
Yeah,
So,
it's so annoying.
Yeah.
I agree. So, but anyway,
but it was a nice place. I still didn't get to go in the pool though because
right, because it was
the
closed.
pool and spa and the gym were closed.
Yeah.
Just like Vegas. So there was a similarity there.
Yeah.
I was kind of disappointed about that because even though we don't have a lot of time at conferences, it is always nice if you can take a nice little swim.
And just relax. That would have been great, especially since we were so like
We were on the
traveled out.
go. Oh my God. Yeah, we got there and as soon as we checked in, we basically just slept for like a whole day.
Literally, oh yeah, almost literally.
Yeah, because we were so sleep deprived. So after we left New York at like 1 a.m. and that was bad news.
Right.
We got to this part, we got the car from the parking garage, had an issue with the car. It was dinged in the parking garage.
Yep.
We drove home. It took, 5-6 hours. We get home at like 6 a.m, go to sleep for a couple hours, get up, pack. Then we had to catch a bus to start our trip to Toronto at 5 a.m. the next day. Mm-hmm. So we were home for like 24 hours and then we got... and so we were running on like no sleep. So as soon as we got to Toronto, we just crashed and we slept for like almost a whole day because we really needed it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but anyway, Toronto itself was pretty nice. Food was fantastic. All the the restaurants were really good. I thought the food was really good.
I had like the best sashimi I've ever had there.
Yeah, Freenode was the name of the place.
Yes, great place. If you're in Toronto,
yeah, check that out. So that was great, and again, the city was nice to see and all, but the conference, I want to get to the conference.
The conference.
And
yeah.
So the conference itself, again, that attitude that you felt in New York wasn't there. I felt like it was, Anthony DiOrio kept talking about community. I thought there was community, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I thought there was community for sure. I did get the sense that there were people there with projects that they really were looking forward to making money off of.
Sure.
And it wasn't like all altruistic or anything like that.
No, right.
But, it wasn't like, there wasn't like this focus on like, how can we be compliant or whatever,
No. Yeah, I didn't really hear the words regulation.
Yeah.
Much of anywhere.
Yeah, and there weren't many investors either.
No. There were some, but most of the companies that were showcasing there were Canadian.
Yeah.
Not all. Airbits was there again. FIFA, of course, was there.
Mm-hmm.
Antminer, some others. But
there was a Bitcoin artist. That was cool. They had a lot of art.
Oh yeah. The Bitcoin art
auction.
was pretty wild that they did an auction for.
Some
that was
really
cool
art. Like I don't usually get excited about art, but I was really impressed.
Yeah, some of it was pretty impressive. So, but I think, large part, obviously, again, the attitude was great. Plenty of speakers saying, look, we don't need regulation. We don't need the state. We don't need, let's end governments. Bitcoin is freeing up everything, which is exactly the message you want to hear. It was you had to walk a bit to get to the conference itself within, because there's just this huge center.
Huge convention center. Yeah.
But other than that, when you got into the conference itself, very tight-knit. So that was good. As far as like actual things to do, I mean, you had to get up pretty early in the morning again, like you talked about how uncomfortable that is, to give a talk, like an introductory talk to to give an introductory talk about Bitcoin.
Well, the intro talk, that was kind of an interesting experience, because I thought I was going to be giving an intro to Bitcoin talk like I did kind of at the Texas conference. So I kind of had this talk prepared. But then like I saw the schedule, and it was actually like me and 3 people, one of whom couldn't make it. So it was supposed to be like me, Jonathan Mohan, but he couldn't make it, and Chris Horlatcher with the Mises Institute of Canada.
Right.
And so Will Pangman, really good guy, he filled in for John Mohan. And so we were kind of talking about like, well, hey, what are we going to do in the morning? We saw each other the night before, and we're like, hey, what are we going to do in the morning for this Bitcoin thing? And we show up on Saturday morning to give the New User Bitcoin talk. And Will and I had kind of compared notes, but Chris actually had a presentation all ready to go too. Right. So we were like, well, what do we do? So we kind of just winged it, and we let Chris give his presentation first. And like, it was a great presentation. I learned a lot about Austrian economics and about Bitcoin and about other stuff, but it was more of a like history and economics of Bitcoin talk. It wasn't really like a new user Bitcoin talk.
Yeah,
to me, I didn't think it was very appropriate for new users, but it was a great talk.
Yeah, it was great and it wasn't. To me, like, okay, yes, he was laying out some interesting history, that Bitcoin, he was trying to make the case that Bitcoin was inevitable. There were some parts of it that I thought were kind of BS. Like, he started saying that, Hayek said that, eventually there's going to be this private money and all this stuff. And like he, quoted Mises a bit. And it's like, as if those guys would have liked Bitcoin. I think they would have hated it. You know what I mean? I mean, we don't know, but I just thought like to somehow claim that Austrian economics had anything at all to do with Bitcoin is insulting.
Yeah,
because I don't think it had anything. I mean,
Austrian economists resisted Bitcoin very hard until
some still do.
Oh yeah, until it became like basically obvious that it was inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, Bob Murphy's still begrudgingly like accepting it.
Yeah,
of course Jeffrey Tucker's all for it.
Yeah,
but I mean,
but he was the first one to get on board, and that was like not at the beginning of Bitcoin. Like that was for libertarians, they were late adopters.
Yeah, exactly. So, I found that to be. Like, yes, it was sound in what it was saying, especially like his description of Bitcoin was pretty good. But I thought to somehow like attach it to a history, I found that really insulting. And people are going to say...
I found it interesting because I'm kind of a geek about those things. I was, at one time in my life, I was very heavily interested in Austrian economics.
Yeah, me too.
And the Mises Institute.
Yeah, me too.
However, people off the street who don't know about Bitcoin and don't know about the Mises Institute are going to be like, who the fuck is this Hayek guy? What does his opinion matter to me? He's dead.
Yeah.
He's a Nobel Prize winning economist from the 1950s, but like, no, he's long gone. Like, why does it matter what he thinks?
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is a quote I like to throw around.
We can't even ask him what he thinks about Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. This is a quote I like to throw around quite a bit, is like that, look, there's new ideas that we've never even thought of. Basquiat did not invent the iPhone. I mean, that's the quote. Is that Basquiat did not invent the iPhone. So
he did. It was the broken windows theory.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's clever. Okay.
I can't resist a good economic pun.
Yeah. Anyway, so that'll be quote of the show. But look, yes, people will say, well, Satoshi was using sound economic theory when he created Bitcoin. Okay, whatever. But I mean, the point is that the Mises Institute, Rothbard did not, think of Bitcoin. These people did not think of Bitcoin. They have nothing to do with it. And in fact, if the Mises Institute was so goddamned important to Bitcoin, which it's not, Satoshi would have said, thanks to Ludwig von Mises,
Yeah.
I came up with Bitcoin. And so I don't like how this organization, I'm not saying it's a bad organization, but I don't like how they're they're trying to remora themselves to Bitcoin shark to some degree. And it's like, look, no, your gold, guess what? Gold failed, man. Deal with it. It's okay.
I'm not ready to give away all my gold yet.
No. But I mean, gold is not the freeing force of the world.
That's
not like
true.
Bitcoin.
That is true.
I mean, that's my point. Gold still has value. Everybody relax. Gold still has value.
Subjective value.
Subjective value. It has value in our society.
Yes, he did say that in his talk. But yeah, I agree with you. I'm not sure that the Mises Institute and Austrian economics is the most relevant thing about Bitcoin.
Yeah,
that will get new people excited about it.
It felt like a retcon of history, but
and
anyway.
Not only that, but one of the first things about speaking is know your audience. And I know he's from the Mises Institute, but a lot of the audience members, based on the questions they were asking, they were leftists.
Yeah, there's a lot of socialists.
They would have rejected outright anything they perceived as right libertarian.
Yeah.
We got so many questions. Actually, every panel and every talk that I saw at the Toronto conference was like this, where there were basically people with kind of leftist views that would stand up and ask questions about the poor, about is this fair, about equality, about gender stuff, about monetary equality, internet access for people around the world, about that kind of stuff. That was those were their concerns. So if those people knew what Austrian economics was, they probably wouldn't have looked too fondly upon it.
Which they may not have. I mean, maybe they just didn't say anything. And and this is okay, because guess what? Bitcoin's bigger than capitalism. It is, because in fact, Anthony Diorio, the guy who threw this whole fantastic Toronto Expo, Bitcoin Expo, said that his favorite conference of the year was Argentina. And he said that because to them it's a life-saving matter. This is not economics. This is not how can I get a good handbag. This is a life-saving affair. Okay, in Bitcoin. And that's my point, is that this goes way beyond, any ism.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is, it's a technology that's just up in the air. It's just like computers. Computers is not, okay, well, without capitalism, we would have never had computers. All right, fine, fuck, whatever. Stop. The point is that it's a technology that's used by people to do 10 billion things that has nothing to do with any specific ideology. Okay, and that's, so I'm glad that they were there.
Yeah.
Is my point. It was good to hear all sides, because at the same time, these are the same people that want to stop wars. They're not the warmongering status that we have to deal with.
Canada doesn't really wage many wars, but
no, certainly not. But I mean, definitely people coming from all over the world. This is clearly an international audience at the Bitcoin Expo, which is really great.
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, in your introduction, I thought was great. You and Will Pangman did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I have to say, again, I am not the most functional in the morning, and I was pretty sleep deprived from the week before. But we pulled it together, and we did, I thought, a pretty intro level, just kind of Q&A. We bounced questions off each other, and we took questions from the audience, and, we did our best. I thought it came out pretty good.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy talking about Bitcoin with new users.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my new mission.
I think it's an important one.
I think so too. Not enough
most people don't know about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So that's great that we can have these big, deep conversations about what's coming, in the cryptocurrency world. But somebody's got to be there.
Yeah.
To say to, a lot of the noobs, and I mean that in a nice way, hey, this is how it gets done.
Yes.
And you always do a great job of that, because you show people, you have someone in the audience, totally random, come up and say, okay, here's my phone, here's your phone, let's do a transaction, and you do it.
There's always a live demo.
And I think that is for people to see just how fast and how it all works is the singular best thing that can be done, and you do it every time, and I love it.
Thank you. Although, there was a screw up, which was kind of funny that we can talk about. So I wanted to have this live demo in my talk or presentation where, I just whip out my phone. I have some millibits on my phone, and I send whoever, a member of the audience, or in this case, it was Will Pangman who was presenting with me, 1 millibit. And so we went to do that during the presentation, and all these people are staring at me. It's live. We're in prime time.
Yeah.
And he pulls up his blockchain.info app. I pulled up my Celium. I was going to send him the millibit. He was going to receive it. He pulls up blockchain.info, and I guess there's some default setting in the blockchain app where if you don't specify like how much Bitcoin you want someone to send you, sometimes it'll invoice the person for like 1 Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah.
And so I scanned his QR code to send him the millibit, and it came up like it read it on my phone as 1,000 millibits.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, I don't have that much. So I wanted to hurry up because people were watching, and I was like, hey, look how easy this is. Oh, actually, it's not that easy. Like I'm looking at my phone. Oh, there's a fuck up.
Yeah.
So I just panicked and I pressed like, okay, just send whatever the max is that I have on my phone to Will. And I said, there, sent. Look how easy it is.
Yeah.
And they had no idea. But then later I was like, I had to say like, Will was like, wow, that works so well. Like that was like so seamless. And I was like, actually, I think I just sent you like 190 millibits. I didn't need to send you that much. Could you send it back to me? And he said, I'll think about it.
Yeah.
But he did.
Yeah.
That
So,
was cool.
But either way, it worked out great. That was really good.
Yeah.
So then you gave a talk on Sunday, was it?
No, that was on Saturday.
On Saturday.
It was a weekend convention, so like we were there from like Thursday to Monday, but the convention itself was only on like it started like Friday night with a dinner, and then it ended off on Sunday night.
Yeah.
So it was really just a weekend thing. So I gave a talk about women in Bitcoin, and it was called like, what does Bitcoin offer to women? And sort of like the abstract or the elevator pitch was there's all this talk about women in Bitcoin and how the community is predominantly male, and how can we get more women in Bitcoin? And everybody's kind of talking about this stuff. I would like to talk about like, what does Bitcoin have to offer to women? And so that was how I summarized it. But I made the talk really individualism focused. It was very much like I said at the beginning of the talk, this is not a man-hating talk in any way. I'm not going to pick on men at all. And actually, I think there is no way to get more, quote, women in Bitcoin, because that's a collectivist statement itself. Like, how can we get more women in Bitcoin? That's like asking, how can we get more, like, Eskimos in Bitcoin, or how can we get more lesbians in Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. All of those people are individuals, and all women are individuals, and they have their own ideas and thoughts and opinions and so forth. And they're all different. So really, it's just about getting people to Bitcoin. And, once you think about that, then the possibilities are kind of limitless. It's not about making the Bitcoin QT client pink. It's not about...
Which people have suggested.
Yeah. It's not about, being able to shop for heels or whatever with Bitcoin. Although there probably are some women who would be interested in being able to shop for high fashion with Bitcoin.
Right.
And that's fine. Everybody's different, and it takes all types. It's just that is not going to get more, quote, more women in Bitcoin, because all women are different. We're not a hive mind. We all have our own interests and stuff.
No.
So, like, I really tried to focus on individualism, and I also tried to talk about the things that got me really excited. Like, I talked about the Women's Annex and the Film Annex, paying women in Afghanistan for blogging with Bitcoin.
Right.
I talked about a couple of other cases of, like, entrepreneurship, what I did with my business, starting a home-based kind of Bitcoin business with my voiceover business. And I really tried to make it like, to just make the case that, like, we're all individuals but there are specific issues that affects like women, just like there are men's issues that primarily affect men. And here are some things that might appeal to people who care about those issues that primarily affect women. Like the blogging thing in Afghanistan, like women not being able to keep their money if they live in Afghanistan, and here's a solution to that. Right. Or people who want to spend more time with their kids, who statistically, there are lots of stay-at-home dads, but there are also lots of stay-at-home moms, and that's kind of, a choice that women can make, and of course it's fine to do that. But if they don't want to go to work all day and pay for daycare and so forth, then maybe starting a home-based online business is something they might want to look into as a solution to that. And here's how Bitcoin makes it so much easier, because it is really daunting and difficult to get a bank account, like a business bank account. Nobody wants to do that or knows how to do that if they've never been an entrepreneur.
Right.
There's kind of a high bar to clear. But with Bitcoin, you can just accept Bitcoin. And if you have a blog, you just put up a Bitcoin address and you can start accepting it today without asking anyone's permission.
Yeah.
So I kind of just talked about stuff like that. And I was expecting heat from libertarians who dislike collectivism and would have called me a collectivist simply because I said women in the talk and not people, But actually, I got the opposite. And there were like a couple people in the audience who I think my talk was not radical enough for them. It was they were like standing up and saying, look, there's like booth babes, and like in Bitcoin magazine, there's a picture of this scantily clad women, and I think it's a bunch of shit. That's what Amir Taki said.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And I thought it was really funny and awesome the way that he said it, but it's a serious point that I really didn't address in my talk, which is that, look, there have been some prominent examples of Bitcoin conferences where I heard at the Miami conference, which we didn't go to, that there were like women with like gold body paint with like their boobs like kind of hanging out the bottom of these tiny crop t-shirts and like taking pictures with people. I mean,
yeah, women were being objectified.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll admit, and I don't think I've told you this yet, but I was actually kind of hoping I knew I wasn't going to get it, but I was hoping for a more fire and brimstone feminist talk, actually, because I think there's very serious issues, in the Bitcoin world as regards to women, and men too, certainly, but I mean, fine, we can do a men in Bitcoin talk too. I don't care. But like, in fact, there was, Andreas not forced, but by force of personality, said, that any conference he goes to,
totally free market.
Yeah, they have to
adopt an anti-harassment
policy. And this was made very clear on Friday night that the Toronto Expo had this anti-harassment policy. Inside Bitcoins didn't. Okay. And I thought that was great. And, he came right out and said, don't be a fucking creeper. It was,
he said, I believe his words were, don't be a creepy asshole.
Yeah, something like that. And I kind of like that, because there are reports of women in the Bitcoin community saying they're at these conferences or whatever, and they are getting
groped, kissed.
Yeah, just really way out of line stuff, that should be kind of brought to light. I understand they want to keep their anonymity. That's A-okay with me. Okay. But your talk was fantastic. It was really great. It hit points that were incredibly important.
Thanks.
So, but
I really kept it positive. I didn't focus on a lot of the negative experiences that I've heard. And, perhaps that was a mistake, Brian.
Well, I don't
honestly,
know if it was a mistake.
Well, I was kind of afraid. Like, anytime you talk about feminism or something that resembles feminism or whatever, like, libertarians hate that word. They do. It gets incredibly emotive, and they just get really triggered by that word.
See, but then
or anything that smacks of it.
Yeah, I am so glad the talk that you made is out there. Okay. So, but I want to address this quick. Isn't that all the more reason to give that talk? To give, not the one you gave, but the one that really
Well, perhaps, but it makes it scary. Like every time I've taken a strong stance about, women's issues.
Yeah.
Call it feminism or call it whatever, anti-sexism or whatever you want. And I do talk about men's issues too, believe me. I'm the first one talking about circumcision, divorce, and everything else.
You're fantastic about it.
But every time I've taken a stand on women's issues, you get shit for it.
But that's the thing. Doesn't that prove the point? Doesn't that prove that there's a women in Bitcoin problem? Because if you bring up something that happened to you, holy shit, I can't believe it. You hate men. It's like, no, I just don't want to get groped.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not hating men because I'm bringing this up, or because I want a policy to exist that says, hey, we're going to kick you out if if you're doing something, and it's not just, it's not just women, admittedly. Men, too. I mean, Andreas has a problem where women are almost literally like flocking to him.
He's had some women harass him.
For
sure.
And
more than one, too.
Yeah, and it's funny, and I think a lot of people are like, oh, I wish I was Andreas, having the women fall all over me. Now, you got to understand that it can get into scary territory. Okay, I get it, like the idea of having women, like love you and all this stuff, or like, lust after you, like that's very exciting. I can appreciate that too, but people can go too far.
Oh yeah. When anyone won't take no for an answer, then it becomes scary, whatever gender they are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just about gender, and of course that's what people forget about feminism, is that it's actually a movement that wants to free both genders, not just one. It just happens to have one in the name. How unfortunate. So anyway, but
I mean, anyway. Can we acknowledge that there's something not very free or hierarchical or constraining about gender roles and social conventions that limit women's choices? Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah. There's nothing unlibertarian about that.
Yeah.
But I shouldn't have even been worried about the libertarians, because there were not many, like at the talk, they were more like leftists than there were libertarians.
Yeah.
And I think they were a little disappointed too, because I didn't talk enough about the patriarchy.
Yeah, I mean, either way, people loved your talk. You got tweeted about constantly.
Yeah, I was really,
lots of quotes
getting tweeted. I was really happy that I got the good response.
Your talk was fantastic. I'm not saying by any stretch. I don't think anyone would say that your talk was. I think people were maybe expecting something else.
Yeah.
But I thought it was an incredible talk, and all these are going to be available on YouTube.
I don't want to go up there and yell at people.
No.
That's not the talk that I want to give or that I'm good at giving anyway. Sure. And honestly, I'm not saying there's no problem, because there is a problem, definitely.
Well,
in
the
Bitcoin.
fear of giving that talk is a problem. I think shows the problem in itself.
Yeah, it's true. But I mean, really, I have to be grateful, because the worst experiences that I've had in the Bitcoin community, not the libertarian community, those have actually been worse than the Bitcoin community.
Sure, yeah.
Because libertarians also deny that it's a problem or that it exists. But
yeah.
In the Bitcoin community, I've been online when people didn't know my gender, I've been assumed to be a dude and addressed as dude, bro, man, whatever.
Yeah.
Dude, bro. And also, I've felt a little uncomfortable about places where there were booth babes, namely at the San Jose convention.
Yeah, that was the worst we saw. Of course, we didn't go to Miami.
Yeah, but I'm not getting groped at Bitcoin conferences. I'm not getting kissed. And is that because I walk around with you, a man? Is that because I'm unattractive? Is that because
because you're unattractive?
Is that because people take me seriously? I'm not sure. I don't know why that is. I don't want to get groped, believe me, or anything like that. And it's terrible that people do, and I believe that they do. But, maybe I just don't go to the bars late at night or whatever it is. And I don't really go on the Bitcoin forums. I don't really go on Reddit. So I kind of do insulate myself from some of the online shit that women experience.
Sure.
And that is kind of by choice. So yeah, my experience doesn't represent all women by any means. It's just my own experience. But I think I've been pretty lucky. I haven't really been.
You haven't any problems. Not
many.
Problems.
Yeah, not too bad.
Sure. No, well, that's good. Other than that film crew was ridiculous.
That was
in Vegas.
That I forgot about that for a moment, Brian. Yeah. But I was just thinking of the Vegas conference, and I think that might have been actually the worst.
Yeah. I mean, I got mad about that myself, of course.
The film crew and not. Anyway, we don't have to rehash that.
No, that's fine. So great talk on your part. My talk, I had, my Sunday was loaded. I had...
You had a fireside chat?
Yeah, and actually I'm going to include that in this podcast. Cool. This podcast is going to be pretty long. I hope everybody's getting through this, because I think it's...
I think they like to just hear us chat about it.
It's a worthy discussion, so I hope everybody's sticking through this. But
Sorry, I keep bumping this microphone.
Sorry. So, I am including my fireside chat at the end of this because I actually thought I liked that a lot better than my talk. I had 30 minutes to talk. Anthony DiOrio was very, very gracious in giving me, I hosted a panel, a cybersecurity panel, which was really, really good. Had a lot of information got laid out. In fact, it even kind of made some headlines in some various websites, that cybersecurity panel, which I was very pleased about. So that was good. But my talk, I tried to do a slightly different version of Is Bitcoin More Real Than Gold, where I was being very fair in laying out the problems with Bitcoin, laying out the problems with gold. And I had a pretty packed room. So I haven't listened back to my talk yet. But what I remember of it, I wasn't very pleased with it. I was more pleased with my Austin talk than I was with the one I gave him.
That's funny. We should rewind the podcast back to the Austin wrap up where you said that you hated your Austin talk. And
I didn't get to say everything.
You got censored and you didn't have your slides and you got cut off.
Well, my problem was with the Austin conference people, that I think really screwed me over. But like the talk I gave was pretty good. So, but I didn't get to lay out as much as I wanted to with the Toronto talk. It's no way the Toronto conference's fault. I had a half hour and I needed to make my best of it. Everything was on time, as compared to the Austin conference. I was getting shifted around to different rooms. Everything was on time. Everything was very professional. The guy that introduced me, Alan, he was fantastic. Everything was great. I felt like, now I might listen back to it and go, oh no, that was actually a great talk. A lot of people complimented me after the fact saying, wow, awesome talk. That's where I thought I didn't hit a lot of the notes that I wanted to. Again, so, whatever. I'm not going to ever give that talk again. If I ever get invited to another one of these things, I am not going to give that talk. So, but the fireside chat, I really enjoyed with Kyle K.
They basically had like a podcast room, which was being recorded on video.
Yeah.
And I captured some audio from that room. But they had like kind of these intimate little chats.
Yeah, people got to sit around, and even ask questions. And it was really great. You did one with Elizabeth Pochet.
Yep, that was cool. That was like a unique thing I haven't seen at any other conferences, really.
Right.
Usually it's panels or speeches, and this was really like interviews.
Yeah. And it was really good. My fireside chat, I thought I laid down a lot of info. Kyle's a great interviewer.
You came out swinging against the Bitcoin Foundation right away.
Yeah, I did. Same with my talk. With the talk I gave and the fireside chat. In fact, at the talk, that was the thing that I got kind of the most questions about. Is like, what do you mean the Bitcoin Foundation is a bad thing? And I'm like, yeah, it's a bad thing. Now, I've been saying that for 2 years.
Yeah.
The very first Bitcoin special of Sovryn Tech is like episode 4, or, it was the second special that I did anyway. I said, it's like, look, this organization in their mandate is saying, how do we tax Bitcoin? How do we file a W-2 if I pay my people in Bitcoin and all this stuff?
Well, it's hire a lobbyist and centralize.
Right. And
not really fight the perception that they represent Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. And so right from there, I knew the Bitcoin Foundation was bad news, not something I wanted to deal with. So I got my chance to take pot shots at my talk and the fireside chat at the Bitcoin Foundation. And I got to talk about some alternatives. I didn't get to, though, if you're going to listen to episode 70 of Sovryn Tech this weekend, or this week, which will be released right after this. I am going to talk about Amazon. I didn't get to talk about my thoughts on Amazon at the conference, and I really wanted to because, interestingly, a day after we get back, or a day after, like it was on Tuesday, the day after the conference, whatever, or a couple days after the conference, Amazon made an official statement saying we will not accept Bitcoin.
Right.
And I was going to, now, listeners of Sovryn Tech know I've said this a million times before, that no, Amazon will not be accepting Bitcoin ever, unless it's like 30, 40 years down the line. It's just not going to happen. I really wish I had gotten that in on one of those talks, but I didn't. So anyway, I'm going to talk about it in episode 70, so I'm not going to talk about it now, and people can listen to that, if they want to hear about that. But the fireside chat was really great. Again, I got to talk about some really deep stuff. And, I was really pleased with that. And there was, again, some points I don't get to put out there, but I get the feeling I'd have to have 2 hours to really give the talk that I want to about is Bitcoin more real than gold? Because that would include something you talked about, which was, what was the island's name again?
Oh, the island of Yap.
The island of Yap.
AKA the island of stone Bitcoins.
Right. Now, I knew about the Rye stones, right?
That sounds familiar.
RIA, yeah, I know about these. In fact, oddly enough, one of these Rye stones is in Ottawa, and I saw it years ago.
How did it get there?
Yeah, they put it. It's actually in the Bank
Aliens.
of Canada. Yeah. Well, no, it's in the Bank of Canada. They brought one.
Oh.
to the Bank of Canada, and then there's
Put
one
it on a boat or something.
Yeah. So and it's always been an interesting thing, and this is a point I really wanted to talk about. Was that with the Rye stones, because some people asked me, because a lot of people recognized us. We got to meet a lot of great fans for Sex and Science Hour, which was really nice.
Yeah, that was cool. We got so many people who said they listened to Sex and Science Hour and they love it. It's their favorite show on the network and so forth. Right.
And so we got to meet people. And one of the things people are asking me about is like, you made this comment that you thought that blockchain technology was going to eliminate money. What did you mean by that? And because I never extrapolated on it on any show I've been on. And so something I wanted to include in the talks was the Rye stones, which are from this island of Yap. When you mentioned it earlier, I didn't put the two together. But these Rye stones, I think, actually they're a great example for you to use for Bitcoin. And really for anything, for like even for BitShares or Ethereum or or Next or any of these crypto platforms, because the Rye stones didn't just represent money; they were colored coins of their day.
Yeah,
where
they could represent property.
They represented property on these things, and I find
Ownership
that very, very fascinating.
Yeah,
that just some islanders from 500 CE or whatever, around that time anyway, maybe even earlier, we don't know. We're just basing it, our dating basis in that area is pretty slim as far as evidence goes. But that they literally made a blockchain out of stone.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah,
I in a very real sense.
Blockchain.
Yeah. I mean, so essentially, this island of Yap, I think, had an economic system that smokes the banking system that we know and love, and it's been around for a good couple thousand years.
I wonder how much cheating or corruption or inflation there was in that system.
It's a good question. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
And it's careful. One must be careful. I fall prey to this here and there, where you put your modern sensibilities onto an ancient people. One has to be careful of that. But I would have loved to have brought that up. That hey, this isn't exactly the newest of ideas. Someone else might have thought of this before.
Right.
And in fact, it was so efficient. And who knows how many other people came up with this stuff, just because they're the only stones that we can still find that do that. There's petrospheres, there's all kinds of different stone workings that may have had representations like this. So I don't think the idea is, I think it's older than 500 CE is my point. Of course, it's not aliens, but
I'm
humans.
Just teasing you, Brian.
I know, but humans may have come up with something really fantastic, and I would have loved to have explored that and seen really what other people would have thought about that. So maybe I'll talk about that in another episode of Sovryn Tech at some point, or maybe even on Sex and Science Hour. But anyway, the next thing I want to get to, and we've been running long, so I don't want to take too much more time.
Long? What's long? I mean, we don't have a set length for this podcast.
No, we don't.
And we're doing 2 conferences, so
right.
We can go all night.
Yeah, and usually we do like an hour and a half, 2 hours on a conference, so we're not going to go 4 hours with this, but we're going pretty good. So anyway, I want to say at Toronto, one of the big things around, and I am going to, I have full disclosure with my listeners, I am going to reserve a lot of judgment. Okay, I am going to hold back on, I don't want to be directly quoted on some of this stuff yet. Okay, but I don't
know that there's much you can do about that, Brian. Well, you might get quoted against your will.
Well, but it won't be negative. Okay, and I'm not saying I have negative thoughts about this.
Okay,
I'm just saying that I'm just being totally on the level and saying I am holding back in the subject I'm about to discuss, and that is that the one thing painted all over the Bitcoin Expo, more so than Bitcoin, more so than anything.
Yeah.
And they were a platinum sponsor for what that means with the Bitcoin Expo in Toronto. The platinum sponsor. This is all over the place. Free T-shirts, free stickers everywhere. I got a T-shirt too. I grabbed some stickers, pins, everything all over the place. Was Ethereum. It was all over the place.
It sure was. Yeah.
Charles Hoskinson and Vitalik Buterin, who are both kind of like the big names with Ethereum, both gave packed room talks at this thing, and Ethereum was everywhere. It really was. Like it may have been more discussed, more excited about than Bitcoin even at this conference, and that's amazing. And really, that's amazing because it was the first sign I had seen that we really have gotten, or at least the Bitcoin community really has grown beyond Bitcoin for the very first time.
But we've grown beyond Bitcoin. Most people still have no idea what Bitcoin even is, though.
No, you're right. But that's why I say the community, is already moving so forward. And that's okay because at the same time.
But where are they moving forward to? I realized there were talks about Ethereum and everybody's really excited about what it's going to do, but they don't have a product that's publicly available. I'm just going to say it. I feel like I'm saying the emperor has no clothes, but they don't have a product yet. That's just the fact. And we can talk about what it's going to do all you want, but let's actually get a chance to use it, right? They probably want to do it right. I understand they're taking their time and want to make sure they do it right, but people are awfully excited for something that doesn't really exist, or at least isn't out yet.
Yeah. Now this is the interesting thing is that, right. I mean, you have a proof of concept out there. In fact, they just had a new version of the proof of concept come out just before the conference, the alpha client, where you can see the contract systems work. You can mine Ethereum. Testnet, you're not getting actual Ethereum, folks. Okay. You can do but it's very basic. Okay. And they already have the language written, which is Serpent is the name of their programming language, which is supposed to be a play on Python. And, one can read into the name of the language being Serpent, if they want to. Combined
with the symbol of the Ethereum being a pyramid with a compass and square.
What do you mean by compass and square?
The Freemason thing.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just an
feel free to say whatever you want about
little fact. Yeah, you're not saying it, and I'm curious why, because you're Mr. Symbology.
Well, I said I was going to reserve judgment.
Okay, so you're going to let me say it. But I noticed there is Illuminati symbolism in Ethereum.
Sure. I could see where one would see that.
Yeah. Okay, you're not backing me up here at all, but I know you think the same thing. And it's just a little bit interesting. Charles Hoskinson, in his talk about Ethereum, said that he wanted to re-engineer society, which scared me a little bit, honestly. That really freaked me out. He said something like, well, wouldn't it be great if you had this identity that was on the blockchain, and when you take a course or something online, the course software just signs your identity that you took this course. And I thought, well, no, that might not be great. I might not want everybody to know that I took this class on blowjobs or stripping or something like that.
Sure.
And would I be able to decide that? Can I opt out? That's always a big question. It brings up these big questions of sort of, is the free society one where everything is totally transparent and nobody can cheat? Everybody's subject to the same standards of transparency, or is it one where we can have some privacy on certain things?
Sure. Which, I've talked about that. Ethereum has been there's a website I've talked about in the past on Sovereign Tech called privacyistheenemy.com, or maybe I haven't talked about it, but I mentioned it in my fireside chat.
Yeah, you've talked about privacy.
And Gary LaChance in that actually uses Ethereum as the case for making a completely transparent society. And I mean completely transparent society, and not
meaning there's no secrets. Nothing is sacred.
But bear in mind, there's no government in it either. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the problem. We still do have governments, and you think they're going to want to follow the same rules as everybody else? You think they're going to want to be totally transparent? no.
No,
And
right. No,
not even just
they
governments.
have no interest in that.
Not even just
for
governments
sure.
either. Like when you create some kind of system like that where there's, you know, like people's information is going to be out there in some way, like blockchainized, there are going to want to be people who aren't going to be wanting to follow the same rules and standards as everyone else. Like that kind of thing only works if everybody is held to the exact same standards.
Right.
But there are people who are going to want special rules for themselves, be that governments, politicians, powerful religious people, whatever, you know, or just powerful individuals who have a lot of money, whatever. And that's a concern that I have.
Yeah, I understand that, you know, and I can see where someone would feel very disconcerted that you read something like privacy is the enemy and you say, okay, yeah, he says you can use Ethereum to make this completely transparent society, but no one at Ethereum is saying that they necessarily want to re-engineer society. And then you go, wait a minute.
Actually, they are.
Yes, they did say that.
Yeah.
So I can see where that'd be pretty disconcerting.
Yeah.
Certainly. So,
I mean, I am open to the idea that perhaps I just don't understand it completely and that I'm making some assumptions and I'm freaked out because I just don't understand the technology. But, you know, it's going to have to be really explained to me in a way that I feel comfortable with before I start to want to use everything on it.
Now, I will say, and this isn't anything new, I've tweeted about this in the past, that, yeah, Ethereum doesn't, like, nothing actually really exists yet. And yet it's all over the place, not just at the Toronto conference. A lot of people in my spheres of influence, are very excited about Ethereum. And so it has this incredible marketing machine that Next doesn't have, that it seems BitShares doesn't have. Not that anybody at BitShares is a bad marketer.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. But it has this tremendous marketing machine. It has, like, there's Ethereum meetups. There's all kind. I mean, it's a big deal, and there's nothing there yet. Now, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what I'm about to describe. Okay, I'm just laying out the fact. Is that some people may say is that essentially a Apple is being pulled here, where Apple in the 70s, 80s, they didn't have a product either, but they kept telling everybody, we've got this amazing product that can do this.
Yep.
And people bought into it. And Apple did deliver the goods.
It's pretty clear that Charles Hoskinson takes a lot of inspiration from Steve Jobs.
That may be. And there was that Ethereum video, which I was critical of this Ethereum video.
Oh.
I don't mind saying that. There's this video that was made that was very much like the "This is for the crazy ones" Apple campaign.
Yep.
That was made. And I said, whoa. Okay. Like I said, I'm giving credit to their marketing, to Ethereum's marketing. They're doing a great job. But this was over the top. This was too much. I was like, no, you can't make this video until you've actually, in the past, actually developed something that did change the world, like Steve Jobs did.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs made a video of that ilk, of that caliber,
after
20 years after Apple already changed the world, which it did.
Yeah.
Okay, so that, I thought that was really jumping the gun.
Yeah.
And bad form in my opinion.
Also, it showed all these visionaries in Bitcoin, supposedly, and there was not a single woman on there. When
I would have, if I was doing, especially since they went back to the time of Alan Turing, which I'm glad a gay man was in it. But, no, I'm not saying you have to represent, like, oh, there wasn't a black guy in it either. There wasn't a Hispanic guy. I'm not saying you have to represent everything. The thing is, if you're showing we're thinking different and we're recognizing, people from all walks of life, young, old, whatever, that changed the world. I would have put Hedy Lamarr in that video, who came up with Wi-Fi in the 40s.
Yeah.
Okay.
She was incredible.
She was amazing.
She did a lot for cryptography.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I would have had her there in a heartbeat. And I'm saying this.
Even if you think there are no women today who are making significant contributions,
right.
Yeah, she deserves to be
there. Or even today, put in Marissa Mayer, the creator of Gmail. That's everybody uses Gmail now, seemingly. Obviously not literally. I don't use Gmail. I use, GMX. But anyway, I thought that was bad form. So, but they got an amazing marketing machine. They got a lot going on for them. Maybe they'll deliver just like Apple did. I'm entirely open to that. As to what exactly they are delivering, that's up to a lot of people. What they think on that. Some are scared, some are happy.
There's a lot of question marks around it, and I can't like, I know everybody's really excited about it, but I feel like there is some healthy skepticism involved that's completely appropriate.
Sure.
Of any new technology.
Yeah, any, not just Ethereum, but any of them. So, but definitely a lot of excitement around Ethereum there. Pretty palpable. I mean, and for something that isn't exactly out there. I mean, in fact, I caught Vitalik's, a good chunk of Vitalik's talk, and and this is something I liked about it that I appreciated with Ethereum. He said that, they haven't really figured out how you're going to mine Ether yet. Like, what exactly is what proof are they going to use?
Proof of work algorithm, or is it going to be completely proof of stake?
He actually said
that's a pretty big thing to have not figured out.
Sure,
yet.
Sure. But when he said that it may be proof of stake, and he talked very positively about proof of stake, I totally agree. I think proof of stake is great. I think it's superior to proof of work.
Yeah.
And so I was pleased, to hear that was on the table. He also said it might be something that like some guys in Israel were developing that he was going to put into that, that had better math than proof of work, essentially. So, that intrigued me, that proof of stake, that proof of stake was on the table. And so, I was interested by that. Otherwise, I didn't really hear anything necessarily like that earth shattering on the end of it. So, but it was all over the place. Just to give listeners, a bird's or a mind's eye view of the conference. Ethereum was everywhere.
Yeah. Well, we don't even have to talk about this, but. Another thing I just remembered that did get some heat at the conference was the issue of the Ethereum pre-mine.
Yeah, some people questioned that. Yeah. And Anthony DiOrio got up and said, hey, look, this community's got to get paid somehow.
Yeah.
So, Vitalik had an interesting point of view on that, where he said essentially that in 2010, even 2011, Bitcoin might as well have been a pre-mine because nobody knew about it, and a lot of people got a whole hell of a lot of Bitcoins back then.
Right, but it wasn't like a list of people.
No, right. It wasn't specific people that got in on it. So, but that's when Anthony got up, and made his case.
That's the thing that makes me nervous about. Like, I understand they have to get paid. I understand there's a lot of resources and work that has gone into this. I totally get that, and I sympathize with that. It's just the idea of special different rules for certain people that I think especially with a technology like this, that's what you can't have. You can't have some people who don't have to follow the rules that everybody else has to follow.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that was like the number one question.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would not like drop that point.
Yeah.
They kept pushing it.
Yep.
And so, and these things need to be asked. Certainly.
Oh, yeah. I'm really thankful for the people who do ask those questions.
Yeah.
Because this is not something I think people are just going to accept, like, unquestioningly,
No, right. I mean, and if Charles...
Maybe it is inevitable. Maybe it's going to happen, but, questions are okay.
Sure. And I mean, Charles Hoskinson's dream is obviously, pretty big as to where this can go. But I think it's very important that if you're thinking that big, you need to talk to critics.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And you need to answer them.
Yep.
If you're wanting it to be as large in scope as re-engineering society, you've got to answer these people.
Yeah. And they're not just being a pain in the ass.
No.
A lot of times critics have really useful things to say and legit concerns.
Absolutely.
That you can actually help benefit from addressing.
Yeah. So, that said, again, I thought the Toronto conference, I enjoyed it. We were tired. I am prepared to not go to any other conferences. We'll be going to DC in the Belt, or Bitcoin in the Beltway. I think
we're going to have to do a hard cap of like for a year or something.
Yeah, it's just it's too much.
Yeah, too much.
Yeah, it's really and it gets to the point where it might even be repetitive. I actually, admittedly, I found it refreshing to have so much Ethereum there. I would have been,
because it was a different thing
because
than
it was
Bitcoin.
something other than Bitcoin.
Right,
At least
yeah.
people were talking about the future, and looking forward. And it wasn't. This is the other nice thing too, as far as the talks go at Toronto. It was not about the status quo. It was about the future.
Yeah.
And that's so great. And it seems like Canada's being a big part of it. I mean, they had Bitcoin Decentral there, which was, kind of a base of operations for Bitcoin in Canada and for, hanging out and for Ethereum.
That was cool.
Yeah, I thought that was nice.
I will say it reminded me of a frat house, because when we were there were like 300 people all trying to cram into this house, that has multiple levels.
Yeah, but it's right in the middle of Toronto. I mean, you can't beat the location.
Yeah, it really does do something for community. It's like the CAC or the Quill, with the Free State Project. Like, it really does do something for the community to have an actual physical space where people can use it to have events or have meetings or whatever.
Yeah, and
whatever they want to do.
Yeah, be able to go somewhere and say, okay, these people get Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a base.
Yeah, which I think is really, really cool. So
they had that in New York too. We went to the Bitcoin. What was it called? Like, there was some Bitcoin, the Bitcoin Center NYC,
something like that.
Yeah,
where they were. Go ahead.
That space. I mean, I don't know how. Whoever was paying for that, I don't know how they afforded it.
It was primo.
It was a big space right in downtown Manhattan.
Yeah. Right off of, like right between, Broadway and Broad.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah. I don't know how they got that, but that was interesting.
Yeah. Pretty expensive spot. It was a cool looking place.
That was like the biggest space we were in New York City. Everything else was tiny compared to that.
Yeah. I mean, it was more like a Bitcoin showcase, as to where I think Bitcoin Decentral kind of showed you a place where things could get developed.
Yeah. And they did have a hackathon there, which maybe we should talk about that, because the winner of the hackathon was, it was Amir Taki's team, right?
Oh, I didn't recall.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
Anyway, they built a sort of like decentralized Silk Road type marketplace.
Yeah, phenomenal. Inside
in like 48 hours.
I remember, like within like 30 hours they pulled this thing off.
Yeah,
they had a
incredible.
time frame, but they
and it was
pulled
working.
it off fast.
It was working by the end of it.
That's amazing. Yeah. So I mean, definitely, like I say, Toronto, the Bitcoin Expo, that was as community as you could get. Real stuff happening.
Yep.
And then that was, I mean, it was awesome. And a lot of people talking about side chains, which I'm not going to go, we don't need to go into that right now, which is kind of the new big thing in Bitcoin, to where Bitcoin can essentially leap, to other, to other blockchains.
Yeah.
Or it can operate on other blockchains. It's really, really interesting, stuff. Mastercoin had a good showing there too. I mean, it was really, again, you felt community and you felt the future happening. More so even, I wish MadeSafe was there. Then it would have really been like complete.
I agree.
But that's up to MadeSafe, not up to Toronto. Not up.
Yeah, but people, it was certainly there in spirit, because people were talking about MadeSafe.
Yeah, I was sure to talk about it quite a bit. I thought it was, because it's such an exciting thing that's happening. So...
Yeah, so it was cool to have an opportunity to go there and see what it was like and learn about some new things. And I actually think I caught more talks at the Toronto conference than I have in a while.
Yeah, same here.
So that was pretty cool. But yeah, I'm looking forward now to kind of taking a step back and just giving it a couple months and seeing what evolves over the summer in the Bitcoin world, and the Bitcoin and beyond world, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the PorcFest is coming up. Of course, we enjoy PorcFest. No need to do a wrap-up show for PorcFest, but we will talk about, we'll probably do a wrap-up for Bitcoin in the Beltway, which that should be just a fantastic time.
Cool.
I'm sure of that. So is there anything else you wanted to talk about, Stephanie, with Toronto?
I do want to do a wrap-up after PorcFest.
Okay, well, yeah. Then,
let's do it.
Then Sovereign Tech is always an open... I mean, you're the producer, so what you want goes.
I wear the pants in the studio.
Damn right.
Because you don't wear
not
pants.
For long, but neither of us wear pants for long.
That's right. Anyway. Especially at home.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I think that's what I wanted to cover.
Okay.
You think of anything else?
No, not really. I just, after this, I'm just gonna, we're gonna say goodbye, and or to the end of the podcast, and after this, you're gonna hear my my fireside chat.
Yeah.
Which again, I do have a recording of the talk, but the audio is really, really low. It's going to be available on YouTube. As of right now, I wasn't that impressed with my talk.
And you put your Texas talk in the podcast too, so it was kind of similar to that, right?
Yeah. So this is just matching up. I'll make this a bit of a tradition. So
cool.
Yeah. So Stephanie, thank you so much. I hope everybody got through all this, because I thought there was a lot of really interesting info to come down, and it allows you to kind of have fun with Stephanie and I, which
I think that's what people like about listening to us together. We got so many comments on our dynamic.
Yeah. In fact, someone just recently said, I really love this. They said that if hell means sex, science and technology and Stephanie and Brian, then sign me up. I want to go to hell. And,
yes.
and I thought that was that was really great. So can you get higher praise?
I think there's room in our handbasket, maybe for
hell
a few
in a
more.
handbasket.
Yeah. But Brian, you are such a great travel partner. I really enjoy going around to these things with you. And now I am about to enjoy some nice quality restful time at home with you. So I'm really thankful for that too.
I am looking forward to that. And of course, after the talk, after the talk you're about to listen to, keep your eye out for episode 70. I've got this one's loaded for bear. I've been gone for a couple of weeks, and this one's ready to go. I think you're really going to like it. So listen to that. So again, Stephanie, thank you so much for doing this with me. Boy, how long did this go? Good couple hours.
Ooh,
I'm sure.
We've been going for a long time.
Yeah, I mean,
we're right at the 2 hour
right
mark,
at about 2 hours. So it's going to be about a 2.5 hour business all the way around, but that's okay. I mean, I can go all night long.
Me too.
Really. So, Carpe Lucem, and I'll see you in episode 70, and from here on out.
Okay, so this is the last interview.
Save the best for last.
Yeah, the best for last. Brian Sovryn is from Free Talk Live, and I've met you a few times now. The last time we met, I think, was in Texas.
Yeah, I think it was in Texas.
Yeah. So how have you been doing? What's going on in Bitcoin land for you?
Boy, these conferences.
Might be a little close.
Yeah. These conferences are getting a little tiresome. I don't know. I've heard other people say that they just, there's so many of them. And I was actually just in New York for an Inside Bitcoins Conference. And boy, that was annoying. This conference has actually been great. Austin was pretty good too. Mm-hmm. But this is probably the best one I've been to, because it really seems like the suits, as I call them, or a lot of people are calling them, the suits are just moving in. And yes, they have the money, they have all this, but it really is frustrating, because I think that Bitcoin is such. Maybe almost like eBay, where it was just an idea nobody really had, in the 90s. I understand comparing it to the internet. I get a little worried about comparing Bitcoin to the internet, because, it's like, oh, this is the internet in 1994. And it's like, well, there's a 2001 internet too that crashed and, it was a real problem. So, I don't like to do that. But I mean, it is such a unique idea. It is such a forward-thinking idea. It has so much behind it that to just keep trying to bring these people in that are really just seeing, okay, how can we adapt this technology into the legacy system, meaning the system that we're already in? How can we adapt it into the status quo? It really just makes me sick, and I just, I get so tired. This is a refreshing, conference, but by and large, so many of these are, and there's so many of them, and in fact, I often wonder, like, what is exactly getting talked about at all of them? You do have to wonder at times. So, but that's on my end. That's pretty much it. But I mean, Bitcoin's growing. Of course, I also have a show on the Let's Talk Bitcoin, which is now a network. It's not just a show. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's called Sex and Science Hour, and that's a lot of fun. And that's interesting too, because that's a case where you are seeing that Bitcoin is a lot more than just a technology, but it really is showing everybody that. We don't need the convention, or not. I don't mean the convention like the Toronto convention or the Expo. I mean, we don't need like conventionalism. Mm-hmm. We don't need any of this stuff anymore. And that is just, that part of it is so exciting, but it just seems like we're kind of getting overrun by the money. Mm-hmm. In fact, there's a great quote from BC Next, who is the supposed creator of NXT, which is an altcoin that really doesn't get enough press. And his quote was just from last week that Bitcoin was an incredible invention, incredible innovation, but the problem that happened is it got overrun by people that wanted to make money. But not Bitcoins. They wanted to make dollars. Mm-hmm. And I'm really seeing that. Not so much here, but I'm definitely seeing it.
Yeah, it's funny because hand in hand with that conversation, how much is Bitcoin worth? And it's almost a point of contention in the sense that it's like a sales point for Bitcoin. It's you buy your Bitcoin now, it's $400. Yeah. In enough time, it'll be worth $10,000 a coin or whatever the case is. But really, the true, ethical foundation, I would say, of most Bitcoin holders that actually believe in the technology is there is no cash out. It's Bitcoin all the way through, or crypto all the way through, whatever the case may be. And I almost feel like it's detrimental to a certain degree teaching people that Bitcoin is something that can help them raise their portfolio value if they cash out at the end of it, because it defeats the purpose, obviously. And I agree with you that it makes me very frustrated to see that the traditional markets and the traditional financial structure and government structure and all of that kind of stuff has kind of taken the role of picking on Bitcoin as like the little kid that's growing up and they're the bully, right? When in time, the goal is to completely remove them from the equation. It's not how can we integrate, it's how can we stay sustainable until we don't need to.
It's a great analogy because, the way to raise a child is to let the child explore the world on its own and not to regulate it, not to, quote unquote, legislate it. Yeah. And really that's how Bitcoin got to grow so well, I think, so fast, was because nobody was paying attention to it except for the people that were actually passionate about it. And now you get all these people coming in wanting regulation. They want it to be controlled when they're missing the point that no, it's so solid now. The technology's solid anyway. Mm-hmm. And that's because no one touched it. It was untouched by laws and by governments. So and that's the other part with a lot of these conventions too that are getting annoying is just everybody, even people who I think would be against government regulation, are just coming out and saying, well, regulation's going to happen. Mm-hmm. You can't avoid it, so you might as well work with it. Mm-hmm. And I think, unfortunately, I've heard it here. I think governments are going to fall apart, as well. So the regulation doesn't even matter. It's not a matter of it's going to come no matter what. It's not going to play a part because there's not going to be anything here to enforce it. Mm-hmm. And that's a beautiful thing, And Bitcoin creates that, or cryptocurrencies, crypto platforms, whatever, create that infrastructure that I think shows people you don't need it. There was a story I heard from a friend who holds a Bitcoin meetup in Philadelphia, and he said this guy just walks up to him, after attending a few of these Bitcoin meetups, and he just says, you know what? It's like, after thinking about this whole Bitcoin thing, I don't think we need the Federal Reserve anymore. And I was like, well, right, yeah. I heard that and I thought that was so beautiful because people will see this, that no, you don't need, you don't need a nanny. You don't need people looking over you. Mm-hmm. It can just do it, the tech can do it on its own. Yeah. So it's really refreshing. But that's not to say that Bitcoin itself, and I don't mean, and when I say Bitcoin, I mean really capital B Bitcoin, doesn't have its own issues. Mm-hmm. I think there's plenty of those. Because, namely, the Bitcoin Foundation in and of itself. Because what you have is a centralized body trying to, maybe privately legislate or regulate something that is supposed to be decentralized. Mm-hmm. That's a problem. I mean, that's like, you have a quote I heard from someone else was that, you're trying to build trust companies. This is because this is what happening. And again, a lot of Bitcoin companies that are coming out are just trying to bring the legacy system in, the status quo of finance into Bitcoin. You have these trust companies coming in on top of something that's trustless. Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous. And so I feel like the Bitcoin Foundation is trying to centralize something that is not designed to be centralized.
But to be fair, and while I share the same sentiment, I kind of feel like it's an exercise in futility. I mean, it's no secret that the Bitcoin Foundation has not really been doing anything, in my opinion at least. I mean, we've seen outreach to like public communities, but in my mind, the way that I kind of position the Bitcoin Foundation is, it's kind of like a small set of stairs to help people get onto Bitcoin. But if changes are needed in the actual protocol layer and stuff, that little body is not going to stop them from taking place.
Well, the thing is, they do pay the. I hear what you're saying, but they do pay the developers. I mean, like as I understand it, they have a degree of control of the developers, and that's a concern. And the developers have. There's been cases here and there where they will do things, without any kind of democratic process. Not that I'm a fan necessarily of democratic processes, but they'll just do it because they think it's a good idea, and they won't listen to the community on the matter. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I mean also, to that end, there's alternative developer groups out there who are doing things out of their own self-interest. Like there's the group Coin Voice. They wrote pretty much their own Bitcoin client in the Go language, and the code smokes what the Bitcoin Foundation or what the Bitcoin core team is developing, and no one's talking to these guys and saying, hey, wow, maybe we should have them develop it for us. So I worry that there's someone that again, I still feel like there's somebody that's trying to control something that was never meant to be controlled in any way, be it honestly, be it privately, or even or of course public, federally.
So how do we go from modifying? Well, let me ask two questions.
Sure.
Do you feel that the Bitcoin code is secure enough to not be amended moving forward in the future? Not necessarily secure, but would you agree it needs to be amended at certain points?
Yeah, I think yes.
So how do we do that in a decentralized way?
Well, actually, that becomes the question: is Bitcoin the end-all, be-all? Is that what we should be? Is that the future? A lot of people ask that question too. Like, is Bitcoin the one? Maybe it isn't. I mean, one system you can look at is like MadeSafe, where this is a truly decentralized, like in every single way you could possibly imagine. This is a truly decentralized system that you don't even have to have a complete blockchain. You just got to have a bunch of people agreeing to use it. As far as how to pay those people, I think other people have talked about where Bitcoins can be, or the blockchain can have a voting system, and maybe that voting system is how that could be done. Is that essentially have the community literally decide what they think works best. Might that slow it down a little bit? There's a possibility there, but frankly, the features that other than the side loading thing, which kind of came out of nowhere, the features that we've been promised for quite some time by the core development team for Bitcoin, it's taken years to get them, and in the software world, years is an eternity.
Yeah.
There's no, when you look at things like Ethereum, or maybe that's not the best example, or like NXT, or take your pick. This stuff developed entire infrastructures inside of a couple months. So to say like simple examples of things that can be done with Bitcoin, that features that could be added, for it to take 2-3 years, no, there's a problem there. And I don't want to get conspiratorial, but I do wonder why sometimes it's that slowed down. So I guess my point is that there's a way that should be done completely decentralized, but even the way that it is now, the features that have been asked for and have actually been promised to the Bitcoin community haven't been put in with it in the current infrastructure that it exists.
So let's change pace for a second.
Sure.
I agree with you, but I'm curious, because we all have to exist in the real world as well as in our online personas.
Yep.
You're involved with a number of movements that are pro-freedom, let's call them, and that's Free Talk Live, the Free State Project is another. How do you, you're obviously involved in Bitcoin as well, yes?
Yes.
How do you take your stance in the wake of the recent regulations with taxes and declaring it as a property? I'm holding.
Right.
I don't agree with the system. I don't want to be complicit in that system.
Right.
But I have to exist in the real world.
Okay, well, with that ruling, this is something I've given a lot of thought about, because I think that ruling is not designed against the individual, which ironically are the people that are the most afraid of it. This is, calling it property was specifically, I think, designed to force companies, Bitcoin companies, to work within the law in a certain way. So they don't. The government doesn't have, any government around the world just doesn't have the manpower to enforce that kind of, whatever kind of tax on people, with Bitcoin. And I mean, it was, and there was a collective, when that ruling came out, there was a collective laugh too, albeit somewhat fearful. There was a collective laugh in the Bitcoin community because it's like, how could they ever enforce this? And they can't. There's no way. So the purpose of that is mainly to go after companies. Now, dealing in the real world, which we do, I still pay taxes. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to, I don't want a gun put to my head, which is at the end of the day, that's exactly what happens. But again, I think they are looking at, they're so backwards. They don't even know, the government of the world, they don't even know how to deal with something coming from the ground up. That's why they don't know how to deal with Bitcoin. And I don't think they know how to deal with individuals that have this mindset that, no, I'm going to hold on to my Bitcoins and I'm not going to tell you anything. They can't react to that. They know how to react to companies. They know very, very well how to deal with them. And again, that's what I think that ruling has to do with. So,
is crypto going to become an unstoppable force that eventually transcends taxes and ends them?
I think it's going to, one way or the other, maybe not even positive, one way or another, it's going to eliminate the need for what we understand of as legislative bodies. But of course, the getting rid of the tyranny of the gun or the tyranny of law might bring on the tyranny of the code, and that's a real concern that I have. That I love the optimism for technology, techno optimism as it's coined. I really appreciate that, but we do it's important to understand these things, and especially a lot of people. This is still early on, in Bitcoin's future and crypto's future. And I think it's pretty important for people to learn as much about the technology as they can, to really make informed decisions on, hey, is this going to go? Because I've heard talks for some alternative currencies or alternative platforms where they're pretty much just saying, oh, trust us.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, it's cool that you're coming out with a great product, but no, this is the point, is that last time we trusted people, we ended up with wars around the world and all this other nonsense.
Yeah.
So I think crypto, certainly it's the future, but just like anything else, there's a chance it could be a bad one. I'm open to that.
In fact, as a side note, I think The Tyranny of the Code would be an excellent book title to flesh this concept out in more detail. But what kind of future is that, in a sense where, what do you mean by the tyranny of the code? Because I'm with you that the changes won't necessarily all be positive, and we may lock ourselves into algorithms that we have to follow. I'm just curious if you could flesh it out a bit. Sure.
There's some people that have talked about, they've theorized on what exactly they want out of this stuff. There's a guy, Gary LaChance, who wrote a treatise called Privacy is the Enemy, and he talks about this completely transparent society where, everything is known by everyone. And in some ways, it sounds like a very, very safe society, but then also you really don't have much in the way of privacy. And you don't have, I don't want to get into like the metaphysics of, are there rights and, all this stuff, but, that's a whole other conversation. We could end up with Skynet. We could end up with, a system where, you're not, you could be logged you're not producing enough. Or you take a story by like Harlan Ellison, where he wrote Repent Harlequin, said the TikTok man, where if you're 2 minutes late, you get time docked off your life. That society is so regulated by the code. The code says you got to be here at this time, and you can only use this much resources. It could end up almost literally killing us if we don't follow the rules. And so I don't know if that fleshes it out exactly.
No. It's interesting. In fact, there's a lot of, and not to get into the conspiracy side of things, but there's a lot of people that look at, you're wearing the T-shirt, of course. That look at Bitcoin and global monetary systems as a type of new world order, and it is in the sense that it has radical reform capabilities, though it's not controlled by anybody, or is it? In that sense, right? It uses cryptographic principles that we're not 100%.
This is a concern. Because Bitcoin does have a huge Achilles heel besides the decentralization aspects of it, and that Achilles heel is, where some of these mining pools could literally tear down the entire network, 51% attack. Now, of course, there's cryptocurrencies that have come out that have solved that. But Bitcoin is still the big daddy. And, these people aren't doing 51% attacks. Really, yes, you could say it's self-interest, but I have an argument against that. But they're doing it, quite frankly, just out of, supposedly their own goodwill. And I have a hard time believing that. I mean, humans, mathematics can't solve the illogic of humanity. There's just no way. And so, I'm concerned about that. It's one of the things I like to joke about, because there's a lot of people of the Christian persuasion that are like, oh yeah, this is the mark of the beast, because guess what? If you didn't have an internet connection, which is essentially what Bitcoin runs on, you can't buy or sell. And so like, oh, here it is, the mark of the beast. This is the whole shtick, Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to get into the biblical translations. That's pretty much nonsense. But it is interesting, I guess, that the Book of Revelation said that there would be one world economy, not one world government, but one world economy, which is what Bitcoin would seem to be leading us towards, right? So that's an interesting point to bring up, and I have real concerns about that. In that, before there was so much monetary regulation, say like 1913, if you want to toss out a date, like maybe when the Federal Reserve was created, we did have thousands of currencies. I mean, thousands. Now we're nowhere near that number. It's it's probably under 100. So it's an ironic thing that, and there's a lot of people in the Bitcoin space that want to say that no, and in the economic space that will say, oh yeah, everything's going to coalesce to Bitcoin no matter what, and like the sidechain thing is saying everything's going to coalesce to Bitcoin. I think history tells a different story. And now you want to move on from history. The point of history, is not to mimic it. It's not to copy it. It's not a blueprint. It's to keep from. It's to avoid from falling back into it. But you do see patterns, and it seems like the patterns is that when there is not regulation or less regulation, you actually have a multitude of currencies, and that's why I think the altcoins and all that stuff. I think that's fantastic, and that may be kind of the saving grace from what you're talking about, to where there would be this one world economy.
Yeah, well, I think that even cryptography, or rather cryptographic principles, might designate the channels that economy flows through, in a sense. But altcoins represent like an evolution model. You know what I mean? Like if you have an open ecosystem, you don't get the same product. You get animals, grass, trees, snails, all that jazz, and it works together in a unison. And I think that's what we're starting to see in crypto, and so that's fantastic. I'm just so completely, utterly unsure of how it's going to play out. I can't even fathom what the next 10 years are going to look like. It's really
I agree.
Strange.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it's important to let the chips fall where they may, because when you try and control these things, you end up stifling everything. Which if the regulators do have their way for a short period of time with Bitcoin, we're going to see. Is that, or even not without the regulators. Like I said, the Bitcoin Foundation, maybe not the foundation itself, but the core development team is holding everything up. And this happens with big software companies. Not to say that Bitcoin, the core dev team is a big software company, but they're acting like one. And even their attitude of bringing stuff in and sideloading and all that. This is all embrace and extend. This is stuff that Microsoft did 30 years ago that we're still feeling the effects of being held up by in the computer world. I mean, I can't even imagine if Microsoft Office never became the monolith that it was. I can't imagine what computers would look like now. It'd be really fascinating. But you raise a great point, because even the internet, we don't, like when Gutenberg. This is going to sound cliche, but when Gutenberg did made the printing press, he had no clue what he was doing. I mean, he didn't know the rampant freedom that he would bring onto the world just because of the freedom of information over the next few hundred years. He had no idea how it would take shape. In fact, because that's what directly, arguably can be said, led to the internet down the line. The internet, we don't know how that's going to take shape. I mean, the internet is such a child right now, in that. It's so immature, because websites are just meant to look like newspapers. Advertising is still the order of the day on how to make money. And I'm an ad exec. I'm not against advertising per se. I'm just saying that we haven't really taken advantage of what the internet itself can do. So yeah, there's no way we can really know what blockchain technology, what Bitcoin, and all that's going to look like, because again, the internet, we still don't know how that's going to shape us. because none of this is normal. That's another thing people forget, is that a lot of what we consider normal, sitting in a ballroom like this, is something that's only been done for the past 100 years. And that's in the grand scheme of time, even for human history, however far back you want to go with that, but let's say 6,000 years, that's a pretty small period of time. You can't call that normal. And yet so many, each generation, every successive generation wants to say that, this is how things should be. It's just like your grandmother telling you, I used to walk 12 miles to school, all this stuff. We can't say what's normal. Smartphones are out of nowhere. Now nobody knows what it's like to even be without them, but they've only been around. Smartphones themselves, you had the Palm Pilot and whatever. Really, let's just say it's 5-6 years. The iPhone hasn't been around long, but now it's already quote unquote normal. But in the grand scheme, not normal at all. Something else can come around that that can just change all that. So it's anybody that really tries to gauge what it's going to look like is probably a bit of a fool's errand, but it's exciting to think about and just be informed and cautious. And pay attention. Always pay attention to what's going on.
Well, from a liberty perspective, I like the idea that I often, when I'm trying to talk about transhumanism, I say that Twitter, which is even a rudimentary form of messaging, if it was installed in the way of a chip in your head, for example, that makes the species telepathic in a sense.
Yes.
If you could attach a currency to that, what you could think could become funded. In other words, you create with your mind through the flow of money, and that's tremendously empowering when taken from that perspective. But then you've got other powers that are invested interests against that kind of idea, and how would they use the technology? And it gets really, really interesting. But
yeah, that's a good point to bring up. Certainly, I feel I've made this argument often. Smartphones really do make you transhuman. You're communicating with people all across the world. That's not something humanity can normally do. Whether that's good or bad is up to a person's own theory of value, I suppose. But in being transhuman, I'm a little concerned because I almost don't, and I'm a huge technology fan, obviously, but I'm concerned that when you have control structures like governments, or maybe even dev teams that you don't have a say in, I'm very concerned in new technologies because who really controls the switch? Who can pull the plug, if a plug can even be pulled? And
what happens when you do pull it?
Right. Yeah, and so that's a real worry. But as exciting as it is to think about how how Twitter makes you transhuman and all of that. This is another reason why I think hand in hand, Bitcoin and anarchy or libertarianism, pick your word. They really do need to work hand in hand, because these control structures are really, Bitcoin is showing you don't need them. And that's it. It's showing you don't need them, so they need to go. The more Bitcoin gets adoption, these things need to fall away. And if they don't, you're not going to have what it really has. And it's interesting too, because one of the last times we heard from Satoshi Nakamoto was Gavin Andreessen emailed him, and Gavin, it's a couple of years ago, whatever. And Gavin said, I want to take this Bitcoin thing. I want to make it more mainstream. I wanted to get away from this whole black flag anarchist attitude and all that. And then suddenly Satoshi just never replies and disappears. That's the last we hear from him. And so, I wonder, were those things, was anarchy and Bitcoin really hand in hand? And that's what Satoshi wanted. And then when somebody decided to go against that, he's just like, okay, I'm going to have to go figure out something else. So
interesting. That's an interesting perspective.
Sure.
Well, time will tell, right? He's out there, she's out there, they're out there.
Yeah, he, she, they, whatever it. Who knows?
It's the first AI that's invented 6 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, maybe IBM came up with Watson.
Yeah, they
Bitcoin.
Threw it in the garbage. Found a way home to someplace, plugged in.
I'm open to that.
Bitcoin. So, any questions? Go ahead.
You mentioned earlier that you seem to be kind of a fan of Maxwell.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about what you? I know it's obviously got a more green sort of implementation.
Because of proof of stake.
99.9% make work like Bitcoin.
Right.
Just talk a little bit about what you think for the future is worthwhile.
For next? Okay, well next, again, and thank you for asking that, because like I said, it's not something that gets talked about enough. Next, just to give it its quick history, it's only been around since like November of last year, and it already has, it can already do most of like what Ethereum and BitShares and pretty much any Bitcoin 2.0 or platform that that people talk about. It can already do all of it. It's already there. It's amazing. And people they question it because of the proof of stake. That's why it's green, like you mentioned, where there's no mining involved. And that's I'm into green technology because it's efficient, and I like efficiency. But it raises a good question, because like a lot of people say that, well, the Bitcoin isn't green because you have to do all this mining. It's like, well, printing paper money isn't green. I mean, this stuff's made all out of cotton and everything. But it doesn't even compare. The Bitcoin mining operation doesn't compare to the damage to the environment that Federal Reserve and whatever banks around the world are causing. So as far as the future with Next, again, it just doesn't have the marketing machine. It has all the technical abilities. It has all the technology built into it. To some degree, it's pre-mined, but not really. It uses what's called transparent forging, and it's really interesting. And it can do everything that NAMECOIN does, where you can build websites within it. It doesn't seem like there's much it cannot do. People are building MMO, video games within it, within the essentially the blockchain. That's not exactly an accurate term to use for Next. I think it's very secure, because every wallet in NXT is a brain wallet. And some people like that. I love it. I think that's a fantastic thing. Pretty much any device I go to, I can log in, and they have wallets for iOS. Where's Bitcoin on that? I mean, they have wallets on iOS, they have wallets on Android, all this stuff, all inside of like 5-6 months. They have an entire infrastructure. Nobody's using it.
What's their URL?
I'm sorry?
What's their URL, the website?
I think it's NXT. It's not. They pronounce it Next, but there's no E. It's nxtcrypto.org, I believe, is where you can check them out. So as far as the future with them, BC Next, the creators, walked away as of last week, and he says whatever happens, happens with it. So unfortunately, I don't see it has every reason to have a grand future, but the marketing's just not there.
Do you know what he has moved to?
He, in his own words, he said that he will be back, and he will not be anonymous, and he will have another project that will pretty much beat out NXT, but maybe it's something that will be built on top of NXT. So even his outlook is kind of dire, unfortunately.
That was kind of my question, but I'm interested in the sense that Satoshi Nakamoto remained anonymous with Bitcoin. BC Next, at this point, has done the same with Next. And you have these other 2.0 platforms that are, very much not. I'd just like your thoughts on it.
What it raises the question with Next, with NXT, is did they remain anonymous as to try and copy what isn't a marketing scheme for Bitcoin, but what essentially could be used as a marketing scheme by having this mysterious figure behind it? Is that why Next did the whole BC Next thing? And there's like 70 developers, which that's really clever because, like, that kind of reminds you of the Septuagint, which had 70 translators. That's a Greek translation of the Torah. It had 70 translators and all that. So there might be like a very carefully crafted story behind the creation of Next. As far as people being out in front, it kind of goes both ways. I'd rather they be anonymous because the people that aren't anonymous often come off as pretty pompous, and they don't have a whole lot to really show. Like if the Next developers, if BC Next was a really pompous guy, even in being anonymous and typing out his, and writing out what he writes, I'd be pretty annoyed because, hey, look, man, if it was so great, people, there'd be a lot more behind it, and there isn't. So, I worry about figureheads. I mean, like you look at something like, Apple's really still doing great work. But everybody looks down on it because Steve Jobs is gone. So having a figurehead is a double-edged sword, I think. And if you could keep the person anonymous, they're kind of always alive, right?
Or it was Satoshi again.
Might have been Satoshi. I'm very open to that.
Anyways, we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Brian.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
This has been Sovryn Tech. Visit us at sovryntech.com. That's SOVRYN tech.com. There you can connect with us, see more of what you've heard on today's show, and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is open source. We encourage you to share. Later, nerds.